Mature content. The following stream contains content that may not be suitable for all
Are you
audiences,
sure?
including mature themes, strong language, and potentially sensitive
Objection!
material.
Hearsay!
Viewer discretion is advised.
Good morning, my neighbors!
Hey, fuck you!
Yes!
Hey, J-Bone Nation.
Fuck you too!
Shaming of Jay.
Nice. Wow, wow, wee, wow.
He's not a dopey dumb idiot. He gets
Hey, Bo,
laid.
what's this I'm hearing about what you're saying? I thought we were friends.
The court
The cone, it's a cone.
The court DJ. It's time to dive into the case. To the case.
What up, fam? Good morning on this Saturday morning. Thanks so much for being here. Hey, Joanne, Pammy, Amber, Tina, Baby Bo's in the house, Brooklyn, Kai, Sarah, Serena, Samantha, Afton, Lisa. Thank you, live stream lurking. Drew, Oasis, Tina, JBZ, thank you, CH. Good morning, everybody. Good morning, Lindsay. Thanks for being here. How's the bird action? Hey, Marissa. Hey, Jan. CH. Bird action, we're starting to get some new birds, which is exciting for me. I have to post to Twitter. I haven't. We got a grackle, which is like black, looks like a raven, but like it's iridescent. I don't know if that's the right word, but the black, like the leaves are like, in the sun, it changes colors. Like you see blue and you see like, I don't know. So we got a red-bellied woodpecker. Got a bunch of house finches, which I like. Charlotte's just said I'm 4 times in a row. I hope she's not having a stroke. Hi, Charlotte. Hello, City Girl. Serena, Cyber Sleuth, Christy, Rhonda. Good morning. Thanks so much, everyone, for being here. So yeah, we're gonna go. Hello, Nikki. For folks who are new here, who have just seen my video content, when I do a live, I do a little more interaction, talking, obviously different than a video. So just, I'll pause we'll watch the testimony, we'll pause it, we'll discuss, etc. And I got a contest going. Hey, Chloe and Sally. Hey, dear Jana. Oh, love to see everyone here. Thanks for being here. Got a contest. If we get 10, Jerry, you're going to have to calm down. If we get 10 payments of 5 or more, can be through PayPal, Cash App, Venmo, which I actually preferred, or through YouTube, that's fine. Got 2 options on the wheel. We'll make a wheel. One is this, it's like a, let me take it out of the box. I've never even used it. It's a vehicle-mounted charging holder. So, like, you put this thing, you suck it on, you put this on the your console, and this is magnetic. You put your phone on it and it charges. This goes on like your dashboard, and like you put your phone on it, so you could win that. Or put this away. By the way, before I forget, I took off Tuesday afternoon at 2:30. Donna Adelson's status conference. I will be live to cover that, and possibly Katie Bogenschutz will be joining me. She said she doesn't have anything currently scheduled, so she'll be joining me for that. So that's Tuesday at 2:30, which is Donna's, I think, last conference status before trial, June 3rd, which is why I'm going to start this series of watching some of the witnesses and doing a little refresher for the trial, which jury selection will be June 3rd. All right, so that was one of the options you can win if you donate 5 and get on the wheel. Or I got a portable oral irrigator. It's like a water pick, I guess. 4 cleaning modes, 360-degree nozzle rotation. Cyber Sleuth getting me started. Cyber Sleuth, Sleuth Steph on the hey, next chapter, good to see you, on the wheel. I gotta remember these names. Thank you. What's up, Tracy, Ladybird? Thanks for being here. It is Brady Star. It all is coming soon. So let's get this started. Hi, dear Jana. Yes, Adelson will be in front of Judge Everett. Hey, Jan. All right, so we're going to start. The witness we're starting with, can anyone guess who the witness is going to be? Because I don't know if people, did I say who? Just got a $6 Venmo from Sarah. Thank you, Sarah, putting Sarah on the list. Good morning, Kim. Good to see you. Hi, baby doll. Anyone want to guess who the witness I'm going to start off with? I don't think anyone's going to guess, but if you want to give it a guess, I'll let you know who we're going to start with. Oh, or it could be a coffee. That's an option too. Buy me a coffee if you want to do that option. So let me pin this. Not Tato. Excellent guess, but not Tato. Good guess, Luis Rivera. I think I'm going to, for my next live, I'm going to do a members poll on Patreon and YouTube to have you pick, but Tato will be an option. Not Tato. Good guess. Not Tuto. He does not draw bridges. But we will do that. We will definitely. He'll my next Jeff. Good guess. He will be one of the things, but not Jeff. No, I don't think anyone's to guess this one. But to me, this gentleman, he's a dude. I'll give you that. One of the most important witnesses. Jeff will be on the next poll. I'll have Jeff on there. I'll have Tato on there. Maybe Charlie. Maybe Wendy. I don't know. Not Wendy. All good guesses. All good guesses. But those will come up in further lives. This guest, Nikki Cuds on Roseboro Jam is getting close. Not Sanford, but close. Nikki Cuds, hey now. Nikki Cuds on the wheel. It is a cop. Does anyone know his name? Hey, Samantha. Good guess, Sanford. The other one. The other most important cop, law enforcement. Anyone want to guess? Well, Pam just got $5 from Pam. She's on the list. Not the guy who's. Why don't you just tell us? All right, I'll tell you. It is Sergeant Chris Corbett, one of the most important witnesses. Isom, no, we didn't do him. He didn't testify in the latest trials. He only testified in the first one, though he may testify in this new one, but not Isom. We're going with Chris Corbett, who did the timeline, did the text mess, did the messages. One of the most important witnesses in the trial, in my opinion. So, and he, it's just to show you how long it's been. My man Babe put his older picture. This was him in 5 years ago, 2019, for the first trial, and here is him for Charlie's trial. Let's get into it. Sergeant Chris Corbett, he's awesome. Good morning, Mary Lou. Thanks for being here. Let's get into it, folks, because this is some of the most important testimony, in my opinion, in the trial. Hello, Jana from Chile. Chile. Welcome, dear Jana. Here we go. Hey, Christy.
Not yet. It's still booting up. I got you. Okay. We can probably go on while it's
Viv
coming to life here.
What's up, Viv? Getting on the wheel.
Yourself to the jury and spell your name for a court reporter, please.
Certainly. Good afternoon. My name is Christopher Corbett, and that's Corbitt, and I'm a sergeant with the City of Tallahassee Police Department.
And you mentioned you're a sergeant. What unit do you work in at TPD?
I currently supervise the Technical Operations Unit, and that's the section of the agency that's responsible for sort of all the high-tech or technological ways that we help out in criminal investigations. That includes things like computer and mobile device forensics, audio and video, CCTV retrieval, our LPR systems. We have a public safety camera system, all of those. And then what I spend most of my time doing, which is the analysis of communication records or analysis of phone records.
And how long have you worked in the Technical Operations Unit at TPD?
For quite some time. I believe 2008 is when I started in there.
Okay. And how long have you been the sergeant supervising that unit?
2012.
Okay. Can you tell us a little bit about, well, we've heard a little bit about your experience, but your training and experience to be in your position?
Drew, thank you so much for the $5 Venmo. Drew's getting on the list. We're getting close to filling the wheel here. Thank you so much, Drew.
One moment. Yes, sir. I think I'm sick. The bailiff will take you back.
Uh-oh, did someone just get booted? What
Have a
happened?
brief.
Oh, this was a juror thing, right? All right. So we don't got to wait for that.
Could you tell us a little bit about your training and experience for your position?
Certainly. I
Jan!
have a little
Thank
over
you, Jan.
1,675 hours of general technical training across kind of all of our disciplines. And then I have just under 900 hours of training specific to communication record analysis. And that, again,
Tammy.
involves the collection of records or obtaining the records,
Thank
the
you,
various
Pam.
types of analysis that we do, including location, estimating the location of a handset, or calling analysis.
So we got Pammy and Pamela. So thank you both. We're almost there.
Instruct other law enforcement officers and analysts across the state and really across the country in communication record analysis. I believe that's...
And what is communication record analysis?
Communication record analysis is kind of a general term for what we can do with the records that are primarily, we're talking about the records that come from communication carriers, like our AT&T, Verizon, cell phone carriers.
Oh, Tiffany. Thank you so much, Tiffany. Appreciate you. Get on the wheel.
Primarily what we talk about. We also do get records from forensic analysis of phones.
Good to see you.
We can add that in. But primarily, again, the carrier records. And from the various types of reports they're able to give us, we can do analysis such as who a handset, and I say handset for cell phone, communicates with most frequently. Again, estimated location.
Wow, I think we got enough folks here. Amber and Joanne and Kim. Oh my God, you guys are too kind. Thank you, thank you. I think we got enough here to spin the wheel so early. Thank you guys so much. Let's do it. And then we'll get to the testimony real quick. So we got Joanne, we got Kim. Thank you so much. Kim, always so kind and supportive. All of you. Thank you so much. So we got 10 for sure. So let's see here. We got Cyber Sleuth Steph. Got that. Nikki Cuds. Do we have Viv on here? I got to put Viv on here. Viv, Jan, Pammy, Tiffany. Oh, Allison Miles. Got to put Allison Miles on the list. Thank you, Allison. All right. We're going to spin a wheel here. I believe I have everyone. Let's get this going. Thank you all so much. So let's go over here. Let's bring this over here. I think I have everyone. Just before I spin it, do I have everyone to win a water pick or and then I'll spin it twice for the second one, or this magnetic mount. So thank you, Amber. Did I get Amber on the wheel? Do I have Amber on there? Yes, I have Amber. Do I have everyone? Check the list. Make sure, guys. Make sure I have everyone on here. I believe Nikki, Pammy, Drew, Jan. Oh, did I do Pammy twice? I gotta take Pammy. Almost got 2. That's because I thought Pammy was the same as Pamela. So 1, 2, 3. Yeah, I definitely have enough. Sarah, do I have Sarah? Yep, Sarah, there you are. Sarah, I got you, Sarah. Do I have everyone? I think I have everyone. All right, here we go. Oh, I don't have the sound effects on. Let's put the sound effects on. All right, here we go. The first winner is Drew. Drew, congratulations, Drew. Which one do you want? Do you want the... hey, what's up, Paul? Do you want the mount for your car, for your phone, or the water pick? Which one, Drew? Let me know. Congratulations, Drew. And then I'll spin again for the water pick. Babe will be very happy. I'm getting rid of more crap. Babe was not so happy that we had another visitor in the Mouse Motel yesterday. So I'm going to spin it again for the water pick once Drew tells me what he wants. Just let me know, Drew.
Approximately.
All right, Drew gets the magnetic thingy, so now we're going to spin for the water pick. Here we go. Drew, email me, theshamingofjay@gmail.com. Yes, Joanne. Joanne wins the water pick. All right, guys. email me, theshamingofjay@gmail.com with your address, and I will mail them out to you. Welcome, Annie McGee. Congratulations, Drew and Joanne. Thank you so much. All right, here we go.
Where was a handset when a certain call was placed? The calling pattern analysis, who calls who, when, all of those kind of things. Really, there's a variety of analysis that we can do with those records, kind of pertaining to whatever the investigation needs.
And have you ever testified where you've given an opinion in court in the field of historical community?
I'm going to ramp this up to 1.25. I think that should be good. Why is this quality so low? Let's put up the quality here, and let's ramp it up to 1.25.
Communication record analysis.
I have, yes.
About how many times?
101.
Judge, those are all my questions as to his qualifications in that field, if defense has any voir dire.
Very well. Mr. Rushmore?
No, Your Honor.
Is there any objection to the witness providing an opinion in the field of historic communication analysis?
No, Your Honor.
Members of the jury, the witness will be permitted to provide you with an opinion in this area of historic communication analysis. You may continue.
All right, so we're going to get to your analysis in a minute, but before we do that, I just have to move certain things into evidence, so we're going to go through that. All right, so you told us that in your position at TPD, you often pull records, call detail records from phone companies.
That's correct, yes.
Are these types of records kept in the normal course of business for phone companies?
They are.
And are they kept by an automated system, by a computer that has knowledge of those events in the records?
Yes.
And are you familiar with how to interpret and read those records?
Yes, I am.
In this case, have you reviewed the phone records of what's been
We don't really have to. We know it's getting into evidence.
marked and
I'm going
shown?
to fast
All
forward
detail
this.
records, and
So we get to
left
the
a chart
analysis.
that's already been admitted into evidence, and without having to recite every numbers for the call detail records we received for each one of these parties. Also review traffic tickets, records from the legit.
Provide a business record certification attesting to the things we mentioned earlier.
Hi, Frog.
And as far as the Wendy Adelson Cellbrite, what is a Cellbrite?
Cellbrite is kind of a carry out and retrieve the information. Kind of say a Cellbrite report is a forensic report. So once we extract that information, then the software goes through and kind of analyzes it for us and says, well, this is a text message, and this is a call log, and this is a Wi-Fi access point, whatever it may be, and creates a report for us that we're able to review and to be able to search through and print out excerpts, whatever we want to do. But it's a tool that allows us to analyze the results of that forensic exchange.
On the day of Dan Markel's murder, July 18, 2014, when she came to the Tallahassee Police Department.
Yes, it was.
All right, and then at some point during this investigation, I mentioned this iCloud. Was a subpoena sent to Apple to get the information from Charlie Adelson's iCloud?
I believe it would have been a search warrant, but yes.
Search warrant, my apologies. And when we received the information from that iCloud, were there messages in that iCloud?
Yes.
All right, and what is an iCloud, for those who don't know?
All right, we know all this shit.
100 include Wendy contract, 65, another comfort rental contract, 66, Spirion GPS information, 80, traffic ticket of Sigfredo Garcia, as well as 85 through 92, which are all of the call detail records.
By the way, I always think of how wild it is that they got a traffic ticket for speeding or whatever. And not only that, they were doing like coke and drinking the entire drive. Like, I mean, obviously I would never murder someone or do a hit, but it's just wild to me. You would think, like, wouldn't you think if you're driving like a long distance to do a murder, that maybe you wouldn't do stuff in the car in case you did get pulled over? Like maybe you would go the speed limit and not do drugs in the car because you don't want to get that. Not these two. They had their own agenda.
That I described earlier when I named out each person.
Any objection from the defense?
No, Your Honor.
Please go through the numbers again.
Yes, sir.
They are admitted.
That should be 85 through 92, 64, 65, 66, and 80. And then finally, this summary that we're going to see where you combined all of that information. Did you create a PDF version to be printed and moved into evidence today?
Yes, I do, yes.
All right, Judge, at this time I would move his summary into evidence. This is State's Exhibit 67. There's going to be both a flash drive containing this and then a physical copy.
Any objection to 67?
No, Your Honor.
State 67 is admitted.
Oh, there's Rauschbaum sniffing his fingers. That man sniffed his fingers. By the way, speaking of Charlie's attorney, and Donna's attorney. Did you guys know that Jackie Fulford, who is, I think that's her name, right? Donna Adelson. Let me just, I was looking this up the other day, and probably a lot of people know this, but maybe not all of them know this. Do you know, first of all, she was a judge who was removed from the bench. But did you know Jackie Fulford, who is Donna Adelson's attorney, not only is she an attorney, she has a funeral home in Young Fulford Cremation and Funeral Services. And who is about us? Who is that? Who is our staff? There she is, Jackie Fulford, a trial attorney and retired circuit court judge. Oh, I thought that was interesting.
All right, so if you could pull up the summary, the PowerPoint on your end, and we'll get started. It is on my okay. End. So let me see what I know what I need.
Totally real, Madeline. Totally real.
All right. Okay, so you told us that about part of your job is getting these call detail records from phone companies. Can you describe to us what these call detail records look like and what's contained in them?
Certainly. So this is a sample of call detail records. This is one page from the many records that we received. And you can see there's a lot of information here on the page, but there's certain sections that we kind of look at for our analysis. So here on the left-hand side, we have the date and time of events. And when I say events, it could be a voice call, it could be a text message, or it could be a data session. Different carriers provide records for different types of events, but in this case with AT&T, we generally see records with voice, text, and data. But we have the date and time of that event. Sometimes our records are provided in different time zones, and we have to do an adjustment to our local time. But in the older records here that we have, these records were actually provided in our local time. Some of the later records we had were not. So that section, again, tells us the date and time of the event. So if we're looking for something that happened on a certain day, that's the section that we go to. The next section here involves who's calling who. These are the phone numbers involved, and one of those would be our target number, or the number that the records are for, and the other number would be the person that's either calling that person or being called by that person. So we see also what they call their seizure time, how long it takes to connect the call, and then the elapsed time, how long the call lasts. We will do a lot of summaries of call detail records. It's easier to read when we kind of do it in a different format that allows us to put a name with a number so we know kind of who's calling who. It's a little bit easier to read. But those summaries will come from that section of the records as far as what phone numbers are communicating with whom else. And then the other section that we have here is the location section. So this is the cell site or cell tower that the handset was communicating with for that particular event. And they give us both a unique identifier for it, a number that we can go to a key or a spreadsheet and look up. And in the case of AT&T, they also provide us the latitude and longitude of that cell site. So when we do location analysis, it kind of looks like this. We can just take that latitude and longitude they give us, or which we looked up and confirmed in that key, and we can plot it on the map. And here it's just represented by this blue dot. But that would be the location of the cell site that this handset was communicating with during that particular sample event. Sometimes just knowing where the cell site is sufficient. We don't really need to know any more. We can do kind of our location analysis. We know this phone was generally in the South Florida area. But our cell sites are, almost all, broken down into multiple sides or sectors. And so that means they have antennas that are facing different direction, and a handset will communicate with one of those sectors. And we're also provided with that information in the call detail records. So not only do we know where the cell site is, but we know kind of which side of the cell site a handset was on for particular events. And sometimes we will look at that to help narrow down where a handset could have been. So sometimes we'll represent them. You can see here the large blue arrow would represent the sector that the handset was using. The smaller black arrows would represent the other cell sites.
Hey, my mom is here. Hey, Mom, it was her. Everyone wish her a happy anniversary. It was her and my dad's anniversary yesterday. What year, Mom? How many years, Mom? Hello, Colleen.
On that or other sectors on that cell site that were not being used, but that kind of gives us an idea of how that cell site is divided up. 3 being the most common kind of division of a cell site.
Can you say exactly or precisely on a map where a certain handset is?
No.
Okay. How do you say whether a handset is consistent with a location or inconsistent?
Yes, generally we're provided with an address, and we're asked to say, could this handset have been at this address, this scene, this incident? And so we look at where the cell site is located, we look at the sector the handset is communicating with, and make an opinion as to whether that sector of that cell site services that incident location. And if it does, if we think it's within the coverage area of that particular cell site and sector, then we would say yes, your incident location is included.
49 years. Next year, the big 5-0.
If that address were to be somewhere far outside of the cell site that we do not believe the signal from that cell site could reach a handset, then we would say no, that location is excluded, or the handset could not have been there.
If a phone is out of battery or turned off or just not being used at that time, are you able to get locations for that handset at those times?
So that's a good point. We can only make estimations about locations when we have events with location. If they're not in the records, then we don't know where a handset could be. So yes, in some of those situations, if a handset is not being used, it may still generate data records. So we may still see location information, even if no one is actively making a phone call or sending a text message. And with some of the carriers, we don't see those. We don't see the passive events, and we may not have location information for some time. But yes, we only can make that determination when we have an actual record with location.
All right, so let's get into this case. Can you walk us through Dan Markel's known locations the day that he was murdered on July 18th, 2014?
Yes.
How dare you, aren't I 48, Jan? I am 44 years old. My senior wife is 45.
We knew that he had been in 3 distinct locations that morning, one being his house, the second being where he dropped his children off at daycare, and then the third being Premier Health and Fitness Center, where he was before returning home. So we knew we had those 3 locations.
Did TPD believe that whoever shot Dan Markel was at least one of these same locations or more that he was at that morning?
Yes, we did have evidence that he was being followed, at least at the last location. So we did believe that it was a probability that the suspects were possibly at all 3 of those locations around the same time as Markel would have been.
Okay. And the last location with the surveillance video you're speaking of is the Premier Gym?
Yes.
Where the Prius was following him?
Yes.
All right. So how did TPD try to identify who was in that Prius?
The first thing that we did is what we call a tower dump, which is kind of a generic term for collecting all of the events that were processed through any cell sites that could service a particular location. So we gave the carriers those 3 addresses and the time frame that we believe the suspects would have been there, and said, please give us all the events that your cell towers processed and the phone numbers associated with those, and so that we could try to do some analysis and determine if, again, those suspects were following him in those locations.
And which phone companies had cell sites in the area?
At that time, we had T-Mobile, Sprint, Verizon, and AT&T.
Okay, so those 4 companies?
Yes.
So
By the way, speaking of Donna's trial and this getting all this data, who's ready to see in the trial the stuff they found on her electronics? Oh, I can't wait.
TPD, you said, then subpoenaed those records to get all of the numbers with events in that location.
That's correct.
Okay.
Take care, Viv. Thanks for being here. Say hi to Coop.
All right, so state has marked and shown to defense, and the witness in previous proceedings states 93, which...
All right, I'm going to make this screen a little bit different so we can see everything. I don't like that it's kind of like getting blocked here, so let's... I don't know if that's better, but... Sorry, I'll be done in 1 second here.
which is the tower dump of T-Mobile.
Hey, Carly.
States 94, tower dump of AT&T. States
Hey,
95,
Donna.
tower dump of Verizon. States 96, tower dump of Sprint, which all contain certifications of business records. Did you review the tower dumps of all those 4 companies in your analysis in this case?
I did, yes.
Okay. At this time, I would move states 93 through 96 into evidence of certified business records.
Any objection?
No, Your Honor.
States 93 through 96 are admitted at this time.
So,
Additionally, sorry, who's ready to see... I mean, think about the jury. They're going to see Wendy Adelson testify at her mom's trial, only come to testify and then leave and not be in the audience the entire trial. Like, I always just try to just think about what is the jury going to think? Not that they can do anything about when, like they could, but just it's just going to be the dynamics of this trial is going to be insane. And then we're going to probably have Katie testifying again, and then it's just going to be.
Was this analysis of those tower dumps a quicker and easy thing to do?
No, not quick or easy. We do have software that helps us that we're able to import these records into, and it kind of does some of the hard work for us in the background. But again, the results that we get have to be researched and analyzed and worked from that point.
Okay. After looking through all of the numbers in all of those 4 discs in evidence and all of that data, was there any one number at all of those locations that Markel was at that morning?
There was not.
All right, so since you couldn't find one number that was in every single one of those locations, what did y'all do next?
Well, the next thought was the call or the tower dump is, again, just kind of a listing of a bunch of phone numbers of handsets that were present in those kind of critical places and times. And at that point, we also had a significant number of records from the subjects in the investigation. So we were actually able to compare the phone numbers of phones that were in the tower dumps with both all of the target numbers or subject numbers that we had obtained records for and all the people that they had talked to. We were able to kind of compare those 2 data sets to see if something would come out.
Okay, and what did you find?
We did, in comparing these, we did find a number that was common to the tower dump from the Premier Health and Fitness, and it was also a number that had been called into one of the subjects in the investigation.
And which subject was that?
That was Mr. Harvey Adelson.
And that's Charlie Adelson's father?
Yes.
Okay, can you show us that call? I want to ask you about the date and time and duration.
Yeah,
okay,
so this,
go ahead.
Sorry, July 1st of 2014, and while it looks like 3 events here, it's actually only 1 call. And this is something that we see in the records. There are a number of routing events that happen when the call is received, and in this case, there's an indication it was routed to voicemail. So that routing shows up as multiple events in the record. So while it looks like more, it is actually only a single phone call.
And what date was this call
Again,
on?
July 1st of 2014.
Okay, and what was the duration of the call?
The duration was 37 seconds.
So that was the time from the time the call connected to the time the call ended?
That's correct.
Okay. Could that be consistent with the 786 caller leaving a voicemail on Harvey Adelson's phone?
It could be, yes. All we know is that it was connected for 37 seconds, and there is the indicator of routing to voicemail.
Okay, was there any other communication in the phone records between this 786 number and Harvey Adelson besides this one call, this one 37-second call?
There was not.
And who did the 786 number belong to?
The 786 number belonged to Mr. Sigfredo Garcia.
And so Sigfredo Garcia's number was consistent with being at Premier Gym at the same time of the victim, and that number having this 37-second call on July 1st to Harvey Adelson is what brought him to the forefront.
One way, yes.
Okay. And was Sigfredo Garcia linked to Charlie Adelson?
He was, yes.
Can you show us how?
So again, one of the main analysis that we do with phone records is what we call a frequency report, or just a simple report that tells us who a particular handset communicates with most frequently. Helps us identify people that are significant in their lives. Maybe.
Thank you so much, Donna. Good to see you, Donna. Thank you so much.
Be co-conspirators or other people, but again, we do that frequency report. So we looked at his frequency report, and at the very top we had this number that ending in 1312.
I was late, but I'm glad to be here.
With a significant number of times by Mr. Garcia.
And who did the 786-1312 number
So the 1312 number was Ms. Magbanos.
Okay.
And regarding Katie, I've said it before and I've said it again. She, to me, has held stuff back, even though she testified. And we got new information from her about the wet money in Charlie's trial. I still think Katie's got stuff that she could talk about, whether she will or not. But I really don't think she's told the full story to date.
To Charlie Adelson.
Again, looking at her frequency or who she communicated with the most, we see her second most frequent contact was a number ending in 9223.
And who did that 9223 number belong to?
That was Mr. Charlie Adelson.
Who was another one of Sigfredo Garcia's top contacts besides Catherine McDaniel?
So we did look at all of his contacts or all the people in his frequency report to attempt to identify who he may have been with. Going back to the tower dump return, we found that there was a phone number in the AT&T tower dump return, also from Premier, that number was also in Mr. Garcia's frequency report. So someone that he communicated with relatively frequently was also here in Tallahassee at the same time.
And who does the 8153 number belong to that was here at the same time?
That was Mr. Rivera's.
All right, looking at your next slide, does anyone else in this chart have phone contact with Sigfredo Garcia down at the bottom, or Luis Rivera right next to him, other than Catherine McBanois, and that 137-second call between Garcia and Harvey Adelson on July 1st of 2014?
No.
Okay, so speaking of that July 1st, 2014 37-second call, was it your understanding through this investigation that that call came after an incident where Garcia confronted McBanois and Charlie Adelson on July 1st when they were going to take out jet skis, and then Garcia left an angry voicemail on Harvey Adelson's phone?
Yes.
In looking at Charlie Adelson's iCloud, were there messages that reference the message left on July 1st?
There are, yes.
Okay. Can you show us those messages? Or what do we have
So
here?
this is just a sample of the Cellbrite report that we've been talking about. We can see that this is just containing the one message, but this is an example of how the Cellbrite report looks and how we're able to go through and get information. For most of our summaries, we will convert those out into something that's a little bit easier to read. You can see that the print's kind of small and there's all kinds of information in there. So when we do these summaries of the text messages, we will kind of bring them out into these bigger bubbles.
By the way, just this presentation is really good. Like, even in this trial, stupid Rauschbaum and his team have the worst presentation of messages. It's embarrassing compared to this excellent presentation by Chris Corbett, Sergeant Corbett.
But we have the two messages here on the left that are from Ms. Magbanowa and the response from Mr. Adelson. And again, this is July 2nd of 2014.
Okay. And in this message from Charlie Adelson to Catherine McBanois on July 2nd, 2014, so this would be the day after the 37-second call to Harvey Adelson's phone?
That's correct.
Okay. Charlie Adelson says, "I'm sorry, but he's a fucking pussy?"
Yes.
Okay. And then he says that leaving messages is so childish, but whatever.
Yes.
Is that right?
That's correct.
All right.
By the way, LOL to Charlie Adelson calling Sigfredo a pussy. I'm sure he'd be that tough in jail if he ever sees him. Prison.
All right. Was Luis Rivera interviewed by law enforcement back in 2016?
He was, yes.
All right. And did he
Amanda Chapman, thank you so much for the £5.
admit that he and Garcia weren't
Boho Hobo, thank you for the $10. Thank you, Boho Hobo.
in fact in that Prius at
Please
Premium
check
Gym
for the
that followed
parodies I
Marcel
sent
on
you. I
July
wrote,
18th,
"You are going down," just for your channel Red Heart, and it's hit LOL.
2014.
He did, yes.
All right. And did both Garcia and Rivera live in Miami back in 2014 to 2016, that time range?
Yes.
Did Rivera tell law enforcement during his interview about an additional trip to Tallahassee besides the one that law enforcement already knew about, where Dan Markel was killed on July 18th?
He did, yes.
Okay. What did y'all do once you learned that information, that before the murder there was this first trip or additional trip to Tallahassee?
Well, we certainly investigated that. We looked at the records that we had to see if we could confirm that trip, and then researched other evidence that we may have been able to collect to document that trip.
And were you able to see from the records that Luis Rivera traveled to Tallahassee not only in July of 2014, but also in June of 2014?
Yes.
Okay, so I want to go now in chronological order, starting with the June trip and then going into the July trip, which culminated in...
All right, folks, if you're new to this, this is the first documented trip that Tuto and Tato made down to or up to Tallahassee. And I also believe that Tuto, this was not, I think he went down before. I mean, I've made videos about this, but I'm pretty certain that these two times, I think he went down before, because, I mean, it'll probably come out in this testimony or later, but he didn't need GPS. He didn't need anything to find Dan Markel's house. And how do you do that your first trip with just an address on a piece of paper? Come on.
Dan Markel being murdered. All right. Looking first at June 2nd of 2014, what did law enforcement find evidence of that happened that day?
The first thing that we found was the rental contract for a rental vehicle that was ultimately driven up here. With that contract, we see that it was in the name of Mr. Garcia. We see the vehicle description here on the right-hand side is a Nissan Altima. and we have a due in the contract that indicates it was due back on June 5th at 8:50 p.m.
Okay. Using that date and time it was due back, what time was law enforcement able to determine that it was rented?
Knowing that they were 24-hour rental periods from this company, then it was logical that it was rented around 8:50 p.m., so we looked at records in that time frame.
Okay, so around 8:50 p.m. on
June 2nd.
June 2nd. Okay,
Yes.
so 3 days before. All right, you mentioned it's a Nissan Altima that he rented. What color was that Nissan Altima?
Silver.
And this is Sigfredo Garcia that's renting this vehicle?
That's correct.
Does Luis Rivera's name appear anywhere on this rental contract?
It does not.
Okay, and you said that this is from Comfort Rental?
Yes.
All right, was there any phone evidence or records to show how the rental car was picked up on
Yes.
June 2nd?
So we know the location of the Comfort Rent-A-Car, here represented by the yellow flag and the label Comfort Rent-A-Car, and we also have Ms. Bagbanowa's residence at the time. Looking at her phone records, the cell sites that her handset was communicating with the evening of June 2nd, we can see on the top right here, there's a cell site at 825, which is near her residence. We have another cell site at 834, where the handset is moved kind of west and south a little bit. And then we see events on the left-hand side, 853 through 858, where her handset is now communicating with a cell site much closer to the Comfort Rental Car.
Did Sigfredo Garcia's phone records from June of 2014 have location information?
They did not.
And why not? Why might that happen?
He was a Metro PCS customer, and at that time, T-Mobile was going through an acquisition of Metro PCS, and the record keeping was a bit sketchy. We ended up obtaining records from both T-Mobile and Metro PCS, and we went back on multiple occasions to try to get more, but we were able to get basically partial records from both providers, but nothing that had location information for the June trip.
Okay. Okay, so we see that you've plotted her cell phone locations on this map, or the cell site locations that her phone was using on this map. After she's consistent with the area of Comfort Rental from 853 to 858, does she stay in the area or does she travel back to her home?
She will travel back. Here we can see for those events, when looking at the specific sector that her handset was using, it's further consistent with the Comfort Rental Car location. And then as you ask, she has events here we see on the left at 917, consistent with moving away from Comfort Rental Car, and then the next event with location to the right-hand side being at 943 and 1001, which will be consistent with her returning to the area of her residence.
Did you look at the records to see who Catherine Magbanowa and any other parties in this case were talking to during this time frame?
Yes.
Okay, can you tell us about that communication?
So this is, again, the call details summary. So this is where we've taken all of those kind of hard to read records from the carrier and we've put them in our software, and it's able to print out a report for us that's kind of easier to follow. We're able to attach names to phone numbers, and we're able to do time adjustments if we need to, so we make sure that all of our records are in the correct time zone as well. So these are the communications starting at about 8:25 and running through approximately 11:30 for that evening of June 2nd. This is during the period of time that this rental car is being picked up, and Ms. Magbanowa and Mr. Garcia are traveling back and forth.
That first call that we see to Geico, would that call be kind of during the time that she would be driving out to the Comfort Rental area?
Yes.
Is she speaking to Sigfredo Garcia at all during that time frame where she's traveling out to Comfort?
She is not.
Could that be consistent with them being together during that time?
It could be, yes.
All right, so then looking at during the time that she's at Comfort and the time period, which was 8:53 to 8:57, I believe, and the time period when she's traveling back to her home, who is she on the phone with during that time?
She communicates with Mr. Adelson, primarily.
Okay, can you tell us the duration of those calls with Charlie Adelson?
I can. The first at 8:57 is actually an outgoing call from Mr. Adelson to Ms. Magbanowa for 1 minute and 8 seconds. We have a call at 9:17 p.m. from Ms. Magbanowa to Mr. Adelson that is 25 minutes and 27 seconds long.
And that's the third call down from the top we see?
That's correct.
Okay, so that 25-minute call, she would have been on the phone with him for much of her drive back home from the car rental?
That's correct.
And who does she call as soon as she gets back home from the car rental after she hangs up with Mr. Adelson?
We have outgoing calls to Mr. Garcia at 10:01.
Okay.
Amber, thank you so much. Gifting a membership that goes to Paul. Capri Sun's in the chat. Welcome, Paul. Thank you so much, Amber.
Now, I want you to walk us through this in just a second. And do we expect most of...
I'm so bummed, by the way. There's like a extension that you can highlight chats, and mine expired. Gotta get a new.
We're gonna be buddies.
Gotta get a new extension. We're gonna wrestle around. So I can highlight the chats again. Oh, come on.
Of these parties to be talking to each other on a daily basis, given that the Adelsons are family members, given that Charlie Adelson is in a dating relationship with Catherine Magbanua and that Catherine Magbanua has children with Sigfredo Garcia, would we expect those folks to be talking to the person that they're in their respective relationship with?
Yes, I believe we would.
Okay, so are you going to be walking us throughout your presentation certain periods of communication, though, that stood out to investigators?
Yes.
And why did those, since these are people that all may be talking to each other anyway on a daily basis, why did these certain periods stick out to investigators?
Well, these are communications that occurred during periods of time where significant events were happening in this crime. And so this is the evening that the rental car, this is the first rental car, is being picked up, and this is the rental car that will subsequently be driven to Tallahassee in an attempt to murder Mr. Markell. So it's kind of the first, from my perspective and what I can see in the records, it's the first kind of physical act that I can see where there's something actually happening. Someone's traveling someplace to pick up a vehicle to go and do this thing. So that's why this period stood out. There are communications that occur during the trips while Mr. Garcia and Mr. Rivera are in Tallahassee. There are communications that occur then and communications that occur upon their return after the eventual homicide of Mr. Markell.
Are there other things about certain communications that stand out to investigators, like a quick turnaround between phone calls?
Yes.
Can you tell us about that?
We can see in this demonstrative here, the third call down we talked about is 25 minutes and 27 seconds. So Ms. Magbanua and Mr. Adelson would have been on the phone from 9:17, add 25 minutes to that. And we see at 9:44, which is just about the time that call would have ended, Mr. Adelson then makes an outgoing call to the Adelson residence, also for 25 minutes and 32 seconds.
Okay, so looking at situations where one of these conspirators hangs up with one and immediately calls the other, that could be something that stands out to investigators.
Yes.
Okay. And then is another, I guess, detail in the communications, maybe calling a number that they might not ordinarily call?
Yes.
Okay. All right, so if you could walk us through the communications that we see, as you said, on like the night that the first physical act of this murder is occurring, during this first trip to Tallahassee where this car is being rented.
So again, to help kind of visualize the calls, we can look at our subjects and then look at our communications. So we already mentioned the 8:57 call where Mr. Adelson calls in to Ms. Magbanua, just over a minute. We have the next call at 9:17 p.m. This was the 27 or 25-minute phone call that we talked about.
And that's while she's on the way back from Comfort to her home?
That's correct.
Okay.
And so in this relatively short time frame, we're also kind of keeping track up here on this one at the top, how much, kind of the total time of communications that we have. So again, at 9:31, Wendy Adelson texts Harvey Adelson. The phone call we already talked about from Mr. Adelson to the Adelson residence for 25 minutes. Catherine Magbanua then communicating with Mr. Garcia. Mr. Garcia back to Ms. Magbanua. Harvey Adelson calls Charlie Adelson. This is 10:16, and that's a 5-minute phone call, a little over 5 minutes. Charlie Adelson calls back for a little over 3 minutes. Ms. Magbanua is communicating with Mr. Garcia again, and then Mr. Adelson for another 23-minute phone call. And then text messages from Mr. Garcia, to a call and then text from Mr. Garcia to Ms. Magbanua. It's about an hour and 25 minutes of communication between our parties in this time frame.
Okay.
More here, 11:05, short calls, or a 27-second call, and then a 4-minute phone call from Ms. Magbanua to Mr. Garcia. Again, communication from Mr. Garcia back to Ms. Magbanua. And that was the last.
All right, we saw a call from Charlie Adelson. You mentioned it.
All right, so let's just take a step back here and think about this, right? Charlie, in his trial, tried to say that the murder was extortion, right? And that he found out about the day that Dan was murdered, right? That's what he tried to say. And Donna's going to try to go to some sort of defense that this was extortion because they thought that somehow it was, the hitman thought it was a better way to get money rather than stealing it from them to kill a man, and that's how they did. But let's just, if that was the case, then why is all this communication happening June 2nd, a month before the murder even happened? Why are they all going back and forth at the same times to set up this first rental if the first time they found out about the extortion was during the murder, which was in July? How are they going to explain this?
All right, we saw a call from Charlie Adelson. You mentioned it. Catherine Magbanua was talking to Charlie Adelson on her way back from dropping Garcia off at Comfort Rental. She talks to Charlie Adelson for 25 minutes on her way back, And then Charlie Adelson, after he gets off that call, calls his parents' landline, Harvey and Donna Adelson's landline.
That's correct.
Okay. Does the defendant, Charlie Adelson, most often talk to his parents on their cell phones or on their home landline?
We looked at, again, for all the records that we had for Mr. Adelson, and our analytical software is able to kind of tally up for us how many communications are with the cell phones, the combined cell phones of Mr. Harvey and Ms. Donna Adelson, compared to their landline or their home phone. And again, we know that
Thank you so much, Gina. Thank you, Gina.
events kind of make multiple records, and so we know that it may not be exactly 3,868 calls, but not all calls are completed, all of those. But statistically, we can see that there were only 28 contacts or attempted contacts between Mr. Adelson's cell phone and the Adelson residence, compared to a significantly greater number to the cell phones.
So you said 99.3% of his communication is with his parents' cell phone as opposed to the 0.7% of the time he calls the landline.
That's correct.
All right. And are there actually, you said 28 contacts or 0.07%?
I mean, think about that. Just the evidence is so overwhelming. Look at this slide. I mean, I'm going to go back. 99.3% of his contacts are to the cell phone, except for the 0.7 when Charlie calls their landline around, when they're checking on days during the murder. I mean, come on. And again, another just amazing visual for the jury.
Up for us, how many Ms. Donna, but 28 contacts or attempted contacts between Mr. Adelson's cell phone and the Adelson residence, compared to a significantly greater number to the cell phones.
So you said 99 landline.
That's correct.
7%. Those 28 contacts, those are from May of 2014 through March of 2016, almost 2 years. There's only 28 contacts total.
That's correct.
And this is one of them that happened that night.
Yes.
And that was at a time, also in that call flurry you just showed us, there were calls where there was a long duration of a call to Harvey Adelson's cell phone as well, too, right?
Yes.
Are you familiar, I want to talk a little bit more about this landline call before we move on. Are you familiar with statements by Charlie Adelson on the wiretap, where Charlie Adelson tells people who call him on his cell phone that he'll call them back on a landline?
Yes.
As somebody who's familiar with technical operations of law enforcement and wiretapping, is there a perception, whether it be wrong or right, but is there a perception that talking on a landline phone is safer than talking on a cell phone as far as who can listen in or whether law enforcement can listen in?
Yes, I believe there is.
I agree, RN.
Right.
Sarah Dugan does a
Rivera's
great
handset
job.
during this time where the car was rented.
So again, knowing the approximate time for the car rental, we looked at Mr. Rivera's cell sites that his handset was using, and we can see that they're consistent with the area of his residence and will be inconsistent with the area of Comfort Rental.
Is there any evidence that Rivera was involved with the rental of this vehicle?
There's not.
All right. Do we have any other evidence that law enforcement was able to find to show who rented the car on June 2nd besides the last rental contract we saw?
Yes, I believe you mentioned earlier a traffic citation. We did recover a traffic citation that was issued to Mr. Garcia, and in that we can see that he is driving the rental vehicle, the same information for the rental contract.
Okay. And was this citation from 9:48 p.m. on June 2nd?
It is, yes.
So within an hour of renting this car, he got a traffic ticket.
He did.
All right. And that was in that silver Nissan Altima?
Yes.
Within an hour. Within an hour, he got a speeding ticket. I mean,
Are you familiar with the statement that Jeffrey Lacoste drives the silver Nissan vehicle or drove that at the time of this murder?
I am familiar with that, yes.
Now, did this traffic ticket create a record that law enforcement would be in possession of? And that record memorialized the fact that Sigfredo Garcia is driving this silver Nissan rental car from Comfort on that day.
Yes.
All right, so after he got that traffic ticket that memorializes that law enforcement is going to have, what did he do next?
There was a change of vehicles. So we have an additional contract from Comfort Rental Car that indicates the vehicle was changed out for a blue Hyundai.
Okay, so then he goes back to Comfort, rents a different car.
That's correct.
All right, this time a blue Hyundai. And again, was it Garcia renting it and not Rivera?
That's correct.
All right. What can you tell us about the travel of Luis Rivera's handset on June 4th of 2014?
So again, Mr. Rivera is the only one that we have location information on for this period. And again, just looking at the cell sites that his handset is communicating with, we can see that it's consistent with leaving the South Florida, Miami area. We see down here at the bottom right, early morning hours of June 4th of 2014. And then we can see that it is consistent with getting into Tallahassee the early morning or later morning of June 4th.
Was Rivera's phone ever consistent with being near the victim, Dan Markel's home on Trescott Drive the following day on June 5th of 2014?
Yes, we did see a number of events where his handset was communicating with a cell site and a sector very close to Mr. Markel's residence.
Are you familiar with Rivera's statement in his interview that they were at a park near Markel's house?
Yes.
Was the phone information here, was that consistent with Winthrop Park near Trescott Drive?
It is. We can see here at the top the location of Trescott Drive, and the blue kind of square there represents the GPS information for the rental vehicle. The rental companies did have kind of asset recovery tracking on their vehicles, and they provided a location for the rental vehicle at 3:17 p.m. here on June 5th. And we can see that the vehicle, or that and the cell site just down here, would both be consistent with Winthrop Park, just on the south side of Benton Road there.
And sometime after this surveillance of Dan Markel, did Luis Rivera's handset end up traveling back down to the Miami area?
It did, yes. Immediately after that, we can see that the handset, again, just looking at the cell sites, would be consistent with traveling back down to the South Florida area that afternoon and evening of June 5th of 2014.
All right, did you look at the records to see what the communication, if any, was between the different parties during this June trip to Tallahassee?
Yes, we did.
Okay, can you tell us about that?
And again, just merely bracketing the period of time that the trip to Tallahassee was occurring, we can look at the communications. This is a summary of just the subjects in our investigation and other targets. So we've eliminated all the other people they're talking to and just focused on the phone calls where they're talking to other subjects in the investigation. But we can see that there are a number of events from the 2nd through the 5th.
Okay. Did Charlie Adelson contact Catherine McVanwa a number of times during this trip to Tallahassee?
Yes.
Okay. Was that about 10 times?
Yes. So again, looking at this, just this time kind of tallying up the number of contacts between our subjects, we can see, yes, Mr. Adelson contacted Ms. McVanwa 10 times in this time frame.
What about Catherine McVanwa to Charlie Adelson?
7 times.
And what about Catherine McVanwa and Sigfredo Garcia?
12 times.
What about Sigfredo to Catherine McVanwa?
5 times.
What about Charlie Adelson and Donna Adelson?
5 times.
What about Donna Adelson to Charlie Adelson?
2 times.
What about Wendy Adelson to Donna Adelson?
2 times.
What about Wendy Adelson to Harvey Adelson?
1 time.
And what about contacts to Wendy Adelson to the Harvey and Donna landline?
We have 1 contact there.
Okay. And what about Wendy Adelson and Charlie Adelson?
We have Charlie and Harvey 1 time.
Okay.
We have Wendy and Charlie 1 time. Harvey and Donna 1 time. Ms. McVanwa to Mr. Rivera 1 time.
And was that at his number he had in July of 2014, or was that an old number for him?
That was an old number for him.
Is that number, though, listed as Tato in her phone?
It is, yes.
Okay. But it wasn't working at the time of, or for the call detail records we have his new number.
That's correct.
Okay. So he had a new number at the time, even though she's calling an old number and not getting in touch with him.
That's correct.
Gotcha. Okay. And what about Luis Rivera and Sigfredo Garcia?
We do see 1 contact between them as well.
Okay. All right. Looking at June 6th of 2014, what can you tell us about the location of the rental vehicle that day?
Again, we were able to obtain kind of periodic locations for the vehicle. It was not constant tracking, but we were provided with another location that was at 8:48 a.m. on June 6th. We can see the location of the rental car by the blue square and its proximity to Ms. McVanwa's residence.
So is that consistent with her being at her residence at that time?
It's consistent with the rental car being near her residence at that time.
Okay. All right. So I want to ask you about a message from the Cellbrite of Wendy Adelson's cell phone from July 6th of 2014. So chronologically, this is going to be after the June trip that we just saw, and it's going to be before the July trip where Dan Markel ended up being murdered. Was there a text sent on July 6th by Wendy Adelson to Dan Markel?
Yes.
All right. Can you show that to us? Okay, what does this text say?
From Wendy Adelson, it inquires of Mr. Markel, are you in Tallahassee July 14th through the 18th? I just wanted to know if I can have the kiddos on the 16th. Thanks.
Okay, and he says yes, you can.
He does.
I mean, I just recently made a video about this, but come on. And why is Wendy sending that? Between this and her driving by the crime scene and Jeff Lacaste's testimony, I just really hope, and more stuff, and the divorce, and she didn't want to be, found for potentially stealing money or have to go through the contempt and the further things that Dan was trying to do. I just have to hope they're going to get Donna's conviction. And they're going to go after Wendy. I mean, come on. Why is this in the slide show for all the trials? Why, they're going to get her, I hope.
All right, the dates that we see that Wendy Adelson is asking Dan Markel about, what is significant about those dates? July 14th through 18th.
Those would encompass the second trip to Tallahassee where Mr. Markel was murdered.
What happened on July 15th, which is in that date range?
15th would have been, I believe, the first rental vehicle.
So the Prius?
Or second rental vehicle, sorry.
Okay, so the Prius was rented on July 15th?
Yes.
Okay. And then on July 16th, that was the date that they traveled to Tallahassee?
Yes.
Okay, Garcia and Rivera, I mean?
That's correct.
And on the 18th is when Dan Markel was murdered?
Correct.
Where was Wendy Adelson when this text message was sent?
So looking at her cell sites, we can see that she is in South Florida at this time. That text was sent, we see here, around 1047 to 1049 is the AM, is the text exchange. 1014 is the closest event that we have with cell site location for her. And we can see the location of the icon, which was the residence of Mr. Harvey and Donna Adelson at that time.
So Harvey and Donna Adelson lived in a condo in the Icon building?
Yes.
At that time? Okay. Where was Charlie Adelson, the defendant, when that text message was sent?
So we have location information for him in the early morning hours of the 6th at 12:30 a.m. and the next event being at 11:46 a.m. Both of those are consistent with the proximity to Ms. Magbanowa's residence. Again, we don't have an event exactly at the time of that text message.
Now, July 6, 2014, was that a weekend day, a Saturday or a Sunday, I believe?
I believe it was, yes.
Was that weekend the weekend of Harvey Adelson's birthday at the Adelson residence?
Yes.
Did Charlie Adelson also go to his parents' home at the Icon on that day that this message was sent?
He did, yes. For events starting about 12:28 in the afternoon of that date through a little after 9, all of his communication events are connecting to cell sites in that area of the Icon.
All right, so now I want to go forward to the July trip to Tallahassee. Can you walk us through, well, I want to talk about the location information surrounding the trip to Tallahassee that took place that week of July 14th that we saw referenced in the text message before. Whose phone records did you have location information for the July trip?
As far as those traveling, we had location for both Mr. Garcia and Mr. Rivera.
Okay, so before we had only Rivera, but now we've got both for the July trip.
That's correct.
Okay, was it a similar situation as the June trip where they rented a car in Miami and drove to Tallahassee?
Yes.
All right. You told us before that July 15th was the day that car, that Prius, was rented. For the June trip, we looked at the night before the car was rented, and we saw some activity and some things on that day. Did you look at the night before the Prius was rented on July 14th, 2014 for the July trip?
We did, yes.
Okay, can you walk us through that night before the Prius was rented? Walk us through the communications and what happened that night.
So we see communication here between Ms. Magbanowa, Mr. Charlie Adelson, and Mr. Garcia. We have some calls starting here in this summary a little after 7 p.m. and going through just prior to 2 a.m. will be the morning of the 15th.
And when you say between the three of them, you mean Catherine Magbanowa was talking to Charlie Adelson, and then Catherine Magbanowa was also talking to Sigfredo Garcia at different times?
That's correct.
Okay. Garcia and Adelson are never talking?
That's correct.
Okay. All right. Were you able to find location data or any messages between Adelson and Magbanowa that night?
Yes. And again, going to the iCloud return and looking on that date, we see a text message or a message from Mr. Adelson to Ms. Magbanowa where he indicates he just tried calling her. We see that's at 8:56. At the top, we can see there was, in fact, at 8:53, an outbound call from Mr. Adelson to Ms. Magbanowa that only had a 1-second duration.
Does his handset end up going down towards her residence?
It does, yes. He indicates in messages that he's 5 minutes away and then on 79 in response to her request to eat closer to her. And then we can see he has a cell site event at 9:27 p.m. where, again, his handset will be in the proximity of Ms. Magbanowa's residence.
Okay. And what time did he end up leaving that residence for good that night?
Well, there's some travel around after that. The handset returns to that area a little before 12:40. We have an event at 12:42 a.m. where we can see the handset is again in the area of Ms. Magbanowa's residence. And then the next event we have at 1:02 a.m. we can see here to the left and up indicates that the handset has moved away from the area of her residence.
Okay. Now going back, if you don't mind, to the call flurry, to the list of calls we saw, who does Catherine Magbanowa communicate with immediately after Charlie Adelson leaves the area consistent with her home that night?
So we see down the list here at 12:48 a.m.
So that's about halfway through?
That's about halfway through, yes.
Okay.
We see an outbound call from Ms. Magbanowa to Mr. Garcia.
Okay. And what time did you have him last consistent with her residence?
That was at 12:42.
Okay, so 12:42 a.m. is the last time that Charlie Adelson is consistent with Magbanowa's residence. After he leaves the area, we then see him quite a bit north at 1-something a.m.
Correct.
Approximately 6 minutes, though, after he last is consistent with the area, she's calling Sigfredo Garcia.
That's correct.
Okay. All right. Can we now look at July 15th of 2014, which is going to be the day of the Prius rental?
Yes. Again, we have a number of communications between all of our parties for that day. And again, this summary is limited to just those persons. But we can see as we go through here, one of the first calls, Mr. Garcia does communicate with other people in the overnight hour, but we see that at 9 a.m. He makes an outbound call to the Comfort rental car, which is the same rental company from the previous vehicle rental.
So we see Charlie Adelson leave the area consistent with her residence at 12:42. Then she calls Garcia at 12:48, and then there's a number of other calls, it looks like, between Magbanowa and Garcia in the 1 o'clock hour that morning?
Yes.
All right. And then Garcia, you said, calls Comfort Rental basically first thing in the morning, as soon as that, probably shortly after that company would have opened at 9 a.m.
Yes, I don't know their exact hours, but yes, it's early in the morning.
Okay. All right. So he calls Comfort Rental, and then what happens next?
There's a series of calls throughout the day between, again, all of our parties. We see that at 4:28 p.m. Is when he makes a call to Hybrid or Save Gas, which ended up being the rental company for the Prius. We see that call is made, and we see that there are a number of communications between, again, all of our parties, but ending down here at the bottom, just after 6, with Mr. Rivera, between Mr. Garcia and Mr. Rivera.
Was there regular communication between Garcia and Magbanowa that day?
There was, yes.
And Garcia and Rivera?
Yes.
All right. So was law enforcement able to find that car rental agreement from Save Gas?
We were, yes.
All right. Can you walk us through that?
So again, just a couple of excerpts from that rental contract. We can see that the renter's name is Luis Rivera. We see written above that the indication of brother, and it provides a phone number that is Mr. Garcia's phone number. And then down here at the bottom, we can see the Toyota Prius. We can see the color of it, the license plate, but that's the vehicle information, and that it shows being out at 6:15 p.m.
Okay, can you tell us about their locations at that time? Did they have locations consistent with being at that rental?
So looking at both of their location information, Mr. Rivera, by the nature of his carrier, has more events. He has several events with a cell site in very close proximity to the Save Gas rental. And Mr. Garcia has an event at 6:11. Again, the car was out at 6:15. And he has an event also on a cell site in the immediate area of the Save Gas rental.
All right, can you walk us through the communication between all of these players the day that this car was rented and right afterwards?
So again, the evening time hours on the date of this rental, we can see that there are a number of communications. And again, kind of looking at a summary of that, looking at the communications this time just between people, kind of tallying those together. But we can see that Charlie Adelson contacts the Adelson residence 3 times. Again, this is the evening hours of the 15th. 3 times for a combined 44 minutes and 17 seconds.
And so you said before that there's only 28 calls total from him to his parents' residence from 2013 to 2016. But now from the time that the first car was rented that night and then now, again, the time that the second car was rented, 4 of those 28 calls are those days.
Yes.
Okay. What's next?
We have Mr. Harvey Adelson being contacted by the Adelson residence.
Could that be consistent with Donna Adelson being present at the residence and talking on the landline phone?
That's correct, yes.
Okay.
Whoa, Gina, $50 recovering from hip. Thank you so much, Gina. Wow. Thanks so much for being here, and I hope, I guess you had hip surgery. I hope the recovery goes well. Drive to Wendy for free.
We have 5 communications between Mr. Adelson,
Thanks, Gina.
Charlie Adelson, and Ms. Magbanowa, combined a little over 11, almost 12 minutes of communication. 32 times. Again, communications or attempted communications between Ms. Magbanowa and Mr. Garcia. Only about 7 minutes and 41 seconds of communication. Mr. Rivera and Mr. Garcia communicate 10 times. A little over 3 minutes of communication. I believe that's it.
Okay. And on July 15th, did any of the parties ever meet up that night?
Again, all this communication before the murder between all these characters, but somehow Charlie and Donna want you to believe that they were extorted and they found out on the day of the murder. Come on, come on. Amber gifting a membership to Keefbo. Thank you so much, Amber.
Yes.
Okay, can you tell us about that?
Well, we see again, going back to the call detail summary, this is Mr. Garcia's records. We see that he has a number of communications to Ms. Magbanowa, and that ends at 9:30. So we have a number of attempts. We see here 8:45 up through 9:30, a number of communications or attempts, and then it kind of ends at 9:30. So what we see, looking at Ms. Magbanowa's locations, that will be consistent with her being at her residence. And then if we look at Mr. Garcia's resident or Mr. Garcia's cell site information after that 9:30 time frame, we see that his location information would also be consistent with her residence.
Okay, and was there a GPS that that pinged that night, and where was that?
Yes, and we also see that, again, another location from the rental vehicle, and we see it's represented by the blue square, its proximity to her residence.
Okay, and did Garcia and Rivera's phones appear to leave the Miami area the next day, on July 16th of 2014?
They did, yes. Here again we have Mr. Rivera's information represented by the blue towers, Mr. Garcia by the orange, and we can see that both of their handsets are consistent with traveling from Miami to Tallahassee. Obviously, we have a number of events here in this time frame, so we can't see every single time. Some of them are kind of hidden behind other labels, but we can pretty clearly see the general time frame of that trip getting into Tallahassee in the very early morning hours of the 17th.
All right. Were either of their phones ever consistent with being near Markel's residence on Trescott on July 17th, the next day, which was the day that Rivera said that they were doing some surveillance on Markel?
Yes, again, here we see the location of Mr. Markel's residence on Trescott Drive by the yellow flag. We see the blue arrows that represent the cell sites and sectors that Mr. Rivera's handset was communicating with. We can see how those are oriented, that they're both towards the area of Mr. Adelson's or Mr. Markel's residence. We also see a cell site and sector represented by the orange arrow for Mr. Garcia. We see it's also oriented towards the residence and will be consistent with being in that area.
Was there communication between all the conspirators between July 16th and July 17th during this travel to Tallahassee and on the day that there was surveillance done in Tallahassee on July 16th and 17th?
Yes, again, this is just the summary of the communication during that time frame. We can see again that there are a number of communications between our involved parties.
If we could focus in on the very late night hours on July 17th of 20.
By the way, I put in a FOIA for the FBI file for the FBI investigation. They did respond, but they won't release it because the investigation is still, ongoing. So because I had the number from the Florida police report of the FBI file, but they will not send it to me, I guess, until this is all over.
14. So this would be the night before Dan Markel was murdered.
That's correct. The night before and into the very early morning hours of Mr. Markel's murder. We do see events here starting at 10:18, and same thing, we can kind of look through and see who's communicating with who. 10:18, we have a call from Charlie Adelson to Donna Adelson for about 4.5 minutes. Another call for just over 4 minutes at 10:29. We have Ms. Magbanowa again attempting to contact Mr. Rivera at the old number, same number we saw earlier. Ms. Magbanowa attempting to call Mr. Garcia. Another attempt to Mr. Rivera's old number. We're now at 11:41. There is a call to Mr. Garcia for about 10 minutes.
Could these calls previous to that be consistent with her not being able to reach Garcia, so she calls a friend of his to try to talk to him?
Yes, generally preceding the calls to Mr. Rivera's old number, we see attempts into Mr. Garcia where they do not appear to connect. They're very short duration, which could be consistent with her not being able to get hold of Mr. Garcia, and then the attempt to Mr. Rivera's old number.
Okay, so it ringing or maybe leaving a voicemail, but not like some long conversation.
Correct.
Okay, so what's next?
See 12:01, Ms. Magbanowa again reached out for Mr. Garcia. 12:07, Mr. Charlie Adelson is contacting Ms. Magbanowa, a little over 3.5 minutes. 12:30, Ms. Magbanua calls Mr. Adelson back, 53 seconds. There's an outgoing call at 1:02. It does not really have a duration, but there is an outgoing call in Mr. Adelson's records to Donna Adelson.
And this is at 1 a.m.?
That's at 1:02 a.m.
Okay, and then what does he do next?
And then at 1:03, immediately after, there is the outbound call to Ms. Magbanua for almost 20 minutes.
Again, just want to remind folks, if you're coming in late, or not a reminder, but just let you know, Tuesday, 2:30, I'm covering Donna's last status conference hearing before the trial. I believe it's the last one. Tuesday, March 25th, I'll be live at 2:30. I took off the afternoon, so I will be covering the hearing, and Katie Bogenschutz may be joining me as long as she doesn't have any work or stuff. So Tuesday, 2:30 Eastern, Donna Adelson's hearing, her status hearing, whatever they call it.
All right, so now if we can go to the next day, July 18th of 2014, the day Dan Markel was murdered. What can you tell us about communication between all of these players that morning?
So again, same summary for the morning of the 18th. We can see communications between our involved subjects here, and we have an indication here this would represent the time that Mr. Markel was murdered between these events, and we can look at these kind of in detail again as we have.
Okay, and what do we see as far as their communication?
So here we have also included the information from Wendy Adelson's forensic extraction, or her Cellbrite report. So we're able to see other things that were contained in her phone. One of the first things we see is that she had a calendar entry for that day for listed as fixed TV.
Now we see that it's deleted.
Yes.
When would that have been deleted?
Sometime prior to our analysis of the handset.
And your analysis of the handset was done that same day?
It was done, yes, the afternoon of the 18th.
Okay. So this calendar event, Fixed TV, was deleted at some point before her phone was taken by law enforcement and looked at that afternoon?
That's correct.
Okay. Go ahead.
And we see that there is an outbound call from Wendy Adelson to Donna Adelson.
And that's starting at 8:09 in the morning?
That's correct.
Okay.
An immediate return attempt. And then a text message. Again, this is from Wendy Adelson's handset itself, but there is a return text message, or a text message from Donna Adelson to Wendy communicating about Best Buy and coming by for the repair of the TVs.
Okay, she says Best Buy.
Hey, Wendy, it's your 70-year-old mother, however old she was at this point. Just wanted to let you know, I have the Best Buy has contacted me because of your TV that's not even bigger than like a TV in a dorm room. I just have to let you know about this. Me, your mom, you're a grown-ass woman, but I want to let you know that the dorm room TV you have, the 32-inch, they're going to come to tell you if a huge fucking crack in it can be fixed. Just want to, no other reason that a Best Buy person would be coming, to a huge crack, which everyone knows the TV's broken, but they're going to come and talk to you because, you have to figure out what to do with the TV. There's no other reason possibly that they would be coming, that we would have someone set that up.
I just called me and I told them to confirm with you. They are on their way over now to help you with the TV set in your living room.
Yes.
Okay. All right, what's next?
We have a text from Wendy Adelson to Charlie Adelson stating, "This is so sweet."
We see that that's deleted.
It is, yes.
That would have also been deleted prior to law enforcement analyzing her cell phone that afternoon, the same day as Dan Markel's murder?
That's correct.
Again, she's and just her excuse that she just deletes everything. So she just immediately deletes all her texts. Yet other texts she still has, but that one's deleted.
Okay, what's next?
An attempt from Charlie Adelson to call Wendy Adelson. And then a return call from Wendy Adelson to Charlie that lasted just over 18 minutes.
Okay, and what about after that 18-minute call between Charlie Adelson and Wendy Adelson?
Well, this will probably be almost during that, but there's a 9:38 call, or just after that, from Charlie Adelson to Donna Adelson, an attempt for 30 seconds. Mm-hmm. And then at 9:57, again, an outbound from Charlie Adelson to Miss.
You know what would be really cool if I was I'm not a professional, but if I was Corbett, I would I would change this to picture to like a screenshot of when she's really angry during her testimony with Georgia. I would change this picture to when And this has got to be, we got to change this to him with his shaved head. We got to change these pictures. We got to change this when she's got her dumb, angry face. We got to change these pictures for Donna's trial. They won't, but.
Ms. Magbanua, 12 seconds. Return call, 9:58, 13 seconds. And again, Mr. Adelson to Ms. Magbanua for 6 minutes and 46 seconds. Charlie Adelson again attempts to call Wendy Adelson at 10:06 a.m. 10:07, 10:08. There's a couple of contacts between Ms. Magbanua and Mr. Adelson, one just over a minute and one about 9 seconds. And then 10:09, Charlie Adelson call to Ms. Magbanua for 5 minutes and 54 seconds. I believe that's all.
Jamie, thank you so much for the 3 coffees. I really appreciate it. Thank you so much, Jamie.
All right, and then I guess the last time we have here is 10:09 a.m. By less than an hour after that, Dan Markel is murdered.
That's right.
Okay. All right, so what can you tell us about, I know you already showed us Dan Markel's locations the morning that he was murdered. Could you show those to us one more time?
I can, yes.
Okay.
So again, we have the Trescott Drive where he departed from, the creative.
Brooklyn Janet says, love you, Jay. Do you, oh, it's going to read it. Let's let it read it. Oh, I don't have the sound effects on. Do you think a regular citizen can get in the courtroom? Yes, you can totally get in the courtroom.
Love you, Jay. Red Heart, do you think a regular citizenry can get in courtroom? I'd love to go.
Yeah, if you live by there are, oh, you mean the conference here? Absolutely. That's public, that's free to the public. You can go. I don't see why not. I know other people who have gone. So I'm pretty sure you can go. Hey, Blair. Good to see you.
At preschool where he dropped his kids off, and Premier Health and Fitness where he worked out before returning back to Trescott Drive.
What can you tell us about Rivera and Garcia's handset locations that morning, looking at phone records and also any other evidence that law enforcement was able to gather?
So again, from the surveillance video of Premier Health and Fitness, we do see the green Prius entering the parking lot, following Mr. Markel. We know from Mr. Garcia's records, we have events at 9:36 a.m. and 9:58 a.m. where his handset is communicating with a cell site in a sector that will be consistent with Premier Health and Fitness. And Mr. Rivera's handset has the events we see here between about 9:14 and 9:44, all of them together, that are communicating with 2 different cell sites and sectors, again, both of which would be consistent with a handset being at or near Premier Health and Fitness.
And these are 2 different carriers, you said, right?
That's correct.
But they're in the same location, even though they're communicating with cell sites that are in different places.
Yes, sometimes the carriers are what we call co-located, where we may have more than one carrier at the same.
By the way, I should have made this point when they went over the first trip, but if you didn't see my video or if you haven't followed this case or you're new to it, the hitmen, specifically Tato, said they went on June 6th. First of all, they said they lost him, but second of all, they said they wouldn't, or at least Tato would not kill him in front of his kids. He had the kids the first time they went, and they wouldn't do it, which means the Adelsons who were playing this did not give a fuck if he had the kids. They knew he had the kids, which also makes sense, in my opinion, why Wendy is then texting at Harv's birthday with Charlie and Donna all together saying, hey, Harv's birthday, which is like the 5th or the 6th of July, hey, just want to make sure you won't have the kids. I want the kids then. Fucking Adelson pieces of shits.
Same set base, same site, sometimes on the same tower or same equipment, and then sometimes they will have towers that are not that close or in different locations from the other carriers. So here we can see between the orange arrows and the blue arrows that AT&T and T-Mobile have some cell sites that are close together and some that are further apart. But all of those, the ones that are being used, will be consistent with a handset at or near the Premier Health and Fitness.
All right, so even though they don't have any other locations after 9:58 a.m. for cell phone events, what time do we know that they left the Premier Gym area from the surveillance video?
We see the time on surveillance video just after 10:38 a.m. We see Mr. Markel's vehicle, and then we see the green Prius, Mr. Garcia, Mr. Rivera, again leaving the gym area.
All right, so Garcia's last location from his cell phone records was 9:58 a.m. when he was consistent with Premier. What's the location for his next active event on his cell phone?
So the next event that we see is at 12:30 p.m. We can see here that it has traveled a reasonable distance from Tallahassee before we see that next event.
And is he the orange dot here with 12:30 p.m. next to it?
He is, yes.
Okay. That looks around about Gainesville-ish area?
North of that, yes.
A little north of Gainesville. All right, so that's the first phone call that Garcia made after leaving Premier?
Yes, that's the first event with location that we have.
Looking at his phone records, what do his phone records indicate about the status of his phone during that time where we don't see any events?
Well, what we see the 9:58 event, an incoming text. We see some events, 12:18, 12:19. There's 2 incoming calls from this 305 number, very short duration, and we don't see locations for those. So those calls did not reach the handset. Powered off, battery went dead, broken, whatever it may be, but those calls did not reach the handset. 12:29 and 12:30, we see these short codes or these short 3-digit numbers here, and those are associated with T-Mobile voicemail events. And then immediately at 12:30, we have the outgoing voice call that provides location. So that would indicate that the handset was now back in service with the network.
Could that be consistent with him turning off his phone after he left Premier and then powering it back on after he figured he was far enough away from Tallahassee?
It could be consistent with that, yes.
And then who was his first call at 12:30 when he was north of Gainesville? Who was the first call that either of these, Garcia or Rivera, makes after the murder?
Miss McBannon.
Okay, can you show that to us? That was the 12:30 call?
Yes.
We see a very short duration. Is that 20 seconds?
It is, yes.
Okay. All right, switching gears here, I want to see where Wendy Adelson was during that late morning, early afternoon time when Markel was murdered and during the couple hours after. Are you familiar with her statement about her locations on July 18th as far as being at home for her TV repair appointment, then going to ABC Liquors to buy a gift, and then going to lunch at Mosaic?
Yes, I am.
All right, based on her call detail records, were you able to determine what time she would have gone by the Trescott Drive area?
Yes, we do know the location of her residence at the time here on Aqua Ridge Way. We do know that she was going to the ABC. This was located on Thomasville Road. Looking at her records.
Just think about this whole part of the slide. This doesn't have to be in Charlie's. This is just about Wendy's trip to let you know. Like, this doesn't have to be. They're pointing out in this part that Wendy went out of her way to drive by the crime scene. But, like, you don't need that to convict Charlie. I mean, I guess it helps in the conspiracy. You don't need that to convict Donna. But this whole slide they put in this presentation is just like, hey, yeah, we know you went out of the way to go to drive by the crime scene, Wendy.
She has a rather lengthy voice call. Begins at 12:31 p.m. We see that's on a cell site that would be consistent with the general area of her residence. We see at 12:35 p.m., kind of in the middle of the screen here, her handset's now kind of halfway between there. And then that call ends at 12:47 p.m., and it ends on a cell site here very close to ABC Liquor Store. So looking at that, again, the receipt time, 12:49, the call ending time, 12:47. We can kind of approximate that she would have been by the Trescott residence, 10 or so minutes earlier than that.
Okay, are you familiar with Officer Brandon's statements that he saw a person in a red van that matched the description of Wendy Adelson's vehicle at the roadblock at Trescott Drive that day in the 12 to 1 o'clock hour?
Yes.
All right. About what time would she have been in the area of Trescott Drive when she's on her way from home to ABC?
Well, again, I would say sometime between 12:35 and 12:47, or 12:49 for sure at the absolute, because she would have been in the store at that point for the transaction. So sometime in that 12:40 time frame.
Okay. Now, did Dan Markel have he and Wendy Adelson's children the morning of July 18th?
He did, yes.
All right, and he had taken them to school that morning, right?
Yes.
All right, looking at her cell bright, were you able to see her calls that morning after she would have passed this Trescott Drive area?
Yes.
All right. After driving by that street, the road being blocked, the crime scene tape, and police cars, did she attempt to contact Dan Markel to make sure he was okay or the kids were okay?
Here we've kind of highlighted the calls that were made after that time, starting at 12:47, and we can see that they're to a variety of people. None of them were Mr. Markel.
Did she attempt to contact Creative Preschool to make sure the kids made it to school? There wasn't type.
And by the way, for folks who have the Jeannie Silberman who have watched my content, I posted a video where I did the police report where there's Isom, I think it's Isom, one of the police talks to Jeannie Silberman. She's like, we know it made her sick to the stomach. We know why this happened or something like that. That's the Jeannie Silberman right there that Wendy's talking to.
Some type of incident at the house.
She did not.
Did she attempt to call 911 or law enforcement to check and see what was going on since her kids were staying on that street?
Lindsay, thank you so much, Lindsay.
She did not.
She just continued on to ABC and then up to Mosaic?
Correct.
Now, are you
Happiest
familiar
of springs
with
to
the
Donna
area
and Bose
at Thomasville
THX
Road
smiling
and
face with
I-10
smiling
where
eyes J.
Mosaic was located back in 2014 when it was around?
Yes.
Were there any liquor stores in that area back in July of 2014?
There were, yes.
Okay, which ones?
So we have the Publix liquor store. They're off of Thomasville Road. Market Square Liquors, Market Square Shopping Center, and there is another ABC location a little further north on Thomasville Road.
What route could she have taken to one of those 3 liquor stores?
Of many, one of the routes is the one depicted here by the red dashed lines, which would have taken her up Centerville Road and then over to Thomasville and down to Mosaic.
What route did she actually take to go to the ABC liquor down on Thomasville and then...
Again, this whole slide is just why Wendy was going to lunch here. Wendy was going to lunch at Mosaic with her friends. She could have went to Publix Liquors. She could have went to Market Square Liquors to get the booze that she wanted for her thing, for the party, the Bullet Bourbon. But no, for some reason, Wendy drives all the way down here past the crime scene. But you're telling me Wendy didn't know anything? I mean, this is just, it's everything right here. But with this, again, Jeff's testimony, they better get her. They just better get her. Why? Why would she drive all the way down here, out of the way, down this road, that like when she could have just went right there? This whole slide is for Wendy's trial. To
Mosaic.
We can see here her path would have been the purple line, and the shortest distance again being the red dotted line.
Now obviously that looks like the shortest distance, but...
Oh, and she repeatedly lies during every trial about whether she went by the crime scene. When she did, she lies about it every time.
How much shorter are we talking about?
Oops. So we can only, our mapping, our GIS software is able to provide approximate travel times and distances, kind of like Google Maps. And so what we can see is that the miles for the shortest route would have been 3.63, and they estimate travel time in about 11 minutes. The other travel was almost 9.5 miles, which they estimate travel at a little over 20 minutes.
Okay, so switching gears here again one more time. Still on July 18th, but now switching back to Garcia and Rivera, who we last heard had their cell phone records were consistent with turning off the phones, turning them back on again above Gainesville, a call from Garcia to Magbanua for 20 seconds. What happens after that?
So again, yes, we see their travel back. There's fewer communications, fewer dots on the map during their
Fewer
return.
dots than when they drove up?
Correct. Sorry. Yes.
Okay.
We see they reach the South Florida area in just after 6 p.m. On the evening or afternoon of the 18th, and then the first thing that we see or information we have is an ATM transaction for Mr. Rivera.
Okay. Based on the ATM transaction that was seen in the bank records, what did law enforcement do?
So first we look at the location information from the handsets to make sure that it's consistent. We do see around the time of that transaction, we do see both Mr. Rivera and Mr. Garcia's handsets communicating with cell sites around the area of the bank. And then investigators were able to locate the surveillance video from the ATM. We can see Mr. Rivera, see Mr. Garcia in the passenger seat, and we see the green Prius.
Okay. Continuing on, once they get back to Miami after they go to this ATM, can you show us the communication between all these parties on July 18th that evening? Okay,
Yes.
So what we see here is all the communication between all of these parties, starting at that 12:30 call from Garcia to Magbanua, and then down through midnight that night?
Down through 10:20 in this particular summary. Yes.
Okay, thank you. All right, can we focus in on later that evening, and I believe the 9 o'clock hour?
Yes.
Okay, so who is Catherine Magbanua communicating with that evening around that time?
Well, we see communication with Mr. Adelson and Mr. Garcia, but the communications with Mr. Garcia end here. This 9:46 is the last event where her handset communicates with Mr. Garcia's that evening.
Okay, and who also is she talking with that evening?
In addition to the communication with our subjects that we've been looking at, we've added in Ms. Yindra Mascaro, and we see that Ms. Magbanua is communicating with her through the evening hours also on this the 18th of July.
Okay, And are you familiar with the statements from Ms. Mascaro, Ms. Magbanua? Ms. Mascaro babysits her kids or was babysitting her kid on the night of July 18th?
Yes, I am.
Okay. So after her communication with Ms. Mascaro, what happens next?
So what we see events earlier on the lower right-hand side, we see cell site events in the 7:10 to 8:46, which will be consistent with Ms. Magbanua's residence. The next events we see 9:20, 9:23, be consistent with her moving away, and ultimately 9:42, one of those last events we saw with Mr. Garcia, her handset is now communicating with the cell site in proximity to Mr. Rivera's residence. We know that also on the way is Ms. Mascaro's residence, relatively on the way.
Okay, so that could be consistent with her dropping her children off at Mascaro's and then heading back up toward.
By the way, I did an interview with Yindra. If you go through my lives, if you want to check that out, just if you check that interview with Yindra out, go a little bit, fast forward a little bit, just because there were some technical difficulties.
Rivera's residence?
Yes.
Okay, so what about Garcia and Rivera? Were they ever consistent with Rivera's residence that evening?
And I was thinking maybe I'll ask Yindra if she wants to, when I rewatch Katie's testimony, if she want to watch with us.
Evening?
You know, come on with me and watch.
Yes. Here for Ms. Magbanua, her 9:46, 9:47 events, and looking at the sector that she's using, again, consistent with Mr. Rivera's residence. And if we look at all of the cell site usage for Mr. Garcia and Mr. Rivera, they are also consistent with the area of Mr. Rivera's residence.
Okay, and who did she speak to on the phone during the 10 o'clock hour?
There's contacts with Mr. Adelson. We see at 10:12 there is Mr. Adelson attempts to call Ms. Magbanua 2 seconds, and then at 10:20 Ms. Magbanua calls Mr. Charlie Adelson for 1 minute and 56 seconds.
Were you able to find any other evidence about Catherine Magbanua and Charlie Adelson's plans that night?
Yes, again, going back to her location information here, the 10:20, 10:22, she is consistent still with the area of Mr. Rivera's residence for those two events. And then we see communication from the iCloud through the evening hours of the 18th between Mr. Adelson and Ms. Magbanua.
Okay, and it appears Charlie Adelson's pretty busy at work that evening?
Yes.
Okay. At 8:23, he says, just finishing, I'm not feeling good. Maybe we can just hang out at my house.
That's correct.
Okay. And this statement about he's not feeling good, would that be before Catherine Magbanua? Would that be before Catherine Magbanua goes to Charlie Adelson's house that evening?
It would be, yes.
Okay, so at 8:23, she's still more consistent with her residence and on her way to Rivera's residence.
Correct.
Okay. All right, so after he says he's not really feeling well, maybe they can just hang out at their house. Then we see the call with them, you said, at I believe, 10:20?
Yes.
All right, and where she's still consistent with Rivera's house at that time?
That's correct.
What can you tell us about Charlie Adelson's locations?
So we can see first event here, 9:19 p.m. We see the cell site is represented by the green dots. At the top of our screen, 9:21, a little further south, and then 9:40 and 11:39, the next events we have with location will be consistent with the area of his residence.
Okay. Now, who arrived at Charlie Adelson's residence during the time when Magbanua was still consistent with Rivera's residence?
Donna and Hartley Adelson.
Okay.
By the way, I think that's only Rauschbaum's first or second objection during this testimony.
Loud.
Maybe it wasn't.
Would that be all right? Okay.
Necessary.
I could rephrase my question, Judge, too. Would that be all right? Okay.
Go ahead and do that.
Was there some evidence in the iCloud involving messages between Donna Adelson and Charlie Adelson where she says she is at his house on the evening of July 18th during a time when Catherine Magbanua is still more consistent with Rivera's house?
Yes.
Okay. Can you show us that message?
I can.
Okay. So Donna Adelson here says, call us ASAP at 7:12 p.m.?
Yes.
And then at 8:59 p.m. she says, outside your house?
Yes.
And Charlie Adelson says 10 minutes at 9:19?
Correct.
Okay.
By the way, if you've been watching the pre-trial stuff, they're going to try to argue somehow that Donna wasn't really at Charlie's residence. They're going to try to argue that. Although, like, why would they if they're going to try to say it's part of the... I think it was the last hearing. They try to be like, well, they were just on their way. That doesn't mean he was there. She was there.
About 10 minutes from when he sent that text message, so maybe about 9:30 p.m. Is that when he's consistent with being at his house?
Yes.
And according to this message, his mother is already there?
That's correct.
Venviti, Ayana says, I was just sitting here thinking, does Wendy even have not guilty stands? She has one. Dude is all over my comments all the time. Don't worry, he's writing a book about it. I forget his Twitter, or I would bring it up right now. This dude comments on my YouTube videos. He comments on my Twitter, and he's just convinced that Wendy's not guilty, and all the people. He has he's writing a book about it. Oh, I gotta find it. He's delusional. I wish I could find. I forget his name. And anyone else who posts stuff about Wendy. Oh, I think his name is it Glenn? Oh, I wish I remembered his name. He's so funny. He's writing a book about it. Don't you worry though. I'll have to get the book when it comes out.
All right. Does Charlie Adelson stay at his house that evening?
He does, yes.
Okay, so the location we saw before, he was still there at 11:39 p.m.?
That's correct.
All right. Let's go to the next day then, July 19th, 2014. So this would be the morning after the murder of Dan Markel. What can you tell us about Charlie Adelson's location that morning?
So we see his events 10:22 through 11:09 a.m. He's still communicating with a cell site adjacent to his residence.
Okay, and what can you tell us about the communication from Catherine McBanwell's phone that morning?
Well, we see that we have some events here, 3:08. This is, again, the morning of the 19th, just Miss McBanwell's records. We see 3 attempts from Mr. Garcia to call her, beginning at 3:08 through 3:26 a.m., and they're all short duration, 41 seconds or less. But those are 3 incoming calls from Mr. Garcia to Miss McBanwell.
Go ahead.
I'm sorry, those records do not have location. So again, meaning that those calls did not actually reach her handset. Her handset was not in communication with a network at that time.
Okay, thank you. That was my question, is did she have location? So no location because her phone was not connected to the network. Could that be consistent with her phone being off?
Yes.
So the last location then we have from her before the morning of July 19th is when she's consistent with being near Rivera's residence and she's speaking to Charlie Adelson on the phone about 10:20 p.m. the night before.
That's correct.
Okay. What is Catherine McBanwell's first location on
Penny!
the call detail records that next morning on July 19th?
So the first location that we see, we saw the calls, the outbound calls there at 9:44 a.m.
Penny, come here.
We can see the cell sites, again, hers represented by the red dots. That will be consistent with travel south from the area of Mr. Adelson's residence, or somewhere south of that towards Mr. Rivera's residence.
Okay, so could this be consistent with her leaving Rivera's residence, turning her phone off, going to Charlie Adelson's home as they discussed in those texts we saw, and then turning her phone back on as she's coming from the direction of his house?
Yes.
All right, and if from the records you just showed us, it looks like she was repeatedly trying to reach Sigfredo Garcia starting at 9:44 a.m.?
That's correct.
Was she able to reach him? Did any of those calls connect?
They did not.
Why not?
Well, if we look at Mr. Garcia's records, we can see here that he has an event at 5:12 a.m. Where there is a successful completion of that call, and then his event starting at 7:09 have no location. This is a sample of the T-Mobile records, Metro PCS records, and we see that there is no cell site identifier, so none of these calls after that are reaching his phone. So again, his handset is now off the network, unable to communicate, battery went dead, whatever the case may be, but there is no more events in his records that actually reach his handset.
What was his last known location before his phone went off the network?
It would have been the area of his girlfriend's residence at that point.
Okay, was her name Stephanie Carmona?
Yes.
Okay, and could this be consistent with him basically getting rid of, dumping his phone the night of Dan Markel's murder or the early morning hours, the morning afterwards?
Yes.
Does he ever have any more communication on the phone after that?
For the records that we have, there are no more originating communications. There's no communications that actually reach the handset. There's no indication that that handset is used at all after this 5:12 a.m. event.
Okay. Now tell us about the other attempted communication with Sigfredo Garcia's phone on July 19th that morning that are relevant to this case.
So there are a number of communications between, again, Ms. McBanwell attempting to reach Mr. Garcia. Ms. McBanwell reaches out to another phone number that's associated with Mr. Rivera and Mr. Garcia, attempts to communicate with them. And then for the first time, we see Mr. Rivera actually call into Ms. McBanwell from his actual phone. And there's more calls that go back and forth throughout the morning. And then all that kind of culminates at 10:31 a.m. where we see that last communication between where Ms. McBanwell was trying to communicate with either Mr. Rivera or Mr. Garcia.
And that number associated with him, that Anthony Ortiz person, is he a documented kind of friend of Garcia and Rivera's?
Yes.
Okay. So this could be consistent with her not being able to get in touch with him, so she's calling friends of his to find him.
That's correct.
All right. And what about Rivera's location that morning? What did his records show us?
He shows us that he was near his residence, and then at some point he travels to the area consistent with Miss Carmona's residence, Mr. Garcia's girlfriend's residence, and then returns to the area of.
All right, real quick, because thank you, Brooklyn. I found it too. I was just looking it up. So if you want to see, here it is. Here is Wendy Adelson's one supporter in the entire universe. Here he is. It is BH Love Doctor. It's the BH Love Doctor, Justice for Dan Markel and Wendy Adelson, an up-and-coming author who is writing a book about Wendy Adelson, whose ex-husband was shot and killed. Wait, I want to see about his book. And one of the where is it? I should just go to his replies. Let's see. He's always replying to me, but there he is. BH Lug Doctor. He is gonna. I can't even see. What does this say? You can't even see. He has one thing where he puts about his book. Where is it about his book? I gotta see. It's like he's advocated for. Where is this thing? Oh, I want to find this thing about his book. What is this? Is that I can't even read this. Oh, that's the name of his Accidental Discoveries, a true crime story about Wendy Adelson, whose ex-husband Dan Markel was shot and killed. The online skeptics and podcasters falsely claim that she was in on the murder or had played some subordinate role. I've already proven 1,000 times over she played absolutely no role. I want to see the thing about his book. Where is it? Oh, there it is. Here is the one I always post. I've advocated for 6 high-profile people who were tried and convicted in the court of public opinion. I correctly predicted that all 6 of them would either be exonerated or not have charges filed against them. Wendy Adelson will be number 7. And who does he got on there? He's got Wendy, Alec Baldwin's on there. He's got Rittenhouse on there. He's got George Zimmerman on there. He's got the girl from Italy. What's her name? I forget her. This fucking guy. Oh, Glenn. So if you ever see his comments, they're on my stuff. He's usually there. And then he has like a list. Here's his list of things of what this is the psychological profile of all the Wendy skeptics have in common. They're biased, judgmental, pessimistic. They're biased, judgmental, pessimistic, stereotypical, delusional, and unhinged people who lack common sense and prefer to draw their own conclusion. Well, that's me. I'm all of those things. They're either independent or far-right Republicans who despise the Democratic Party. If Wendy is a Republican, then she wouldn't be receiving all this animosity. Oh, it's me again. You know me. I'm far-right Republican. They're using her. I'm not going to give this guy more. Anyway, that's Wendy's stand.
Of his residence.
Could that be consistent with nobody being able to get in touch with Garcia, so Rivera goes out to find him, get him, and bring him back?
Yes.
Okay. And does this kind of flurry of attempts to get in touch with Garcia abruptly stop at the 10:30 time frame?
Yes.
And that's when the calls between Magbanua and Rivera stop too?
Correct.
All right. What is the next, or tell us about the location then at 10:31 after this flurry stops?
So picking up with Miss Magbanua's locations from the previous 9:47 a.m., she's getting closer to Mr. Rivera's residence. Events from 10:02 to 10:25 is communicating with a cell site, again, relatively close to Mr. Rivera's residence. And then that final event, we saw that final communication at 10:31 a.m. We see, again, looking at the sector that her handset is using, that it is consistent with Mr. Rivera's residence.
So could this be or is Rivera's location here after his phone travels out from Carmona's and back?
Yes, we do have events with Mr. Rivera. These are the times, approximate locations, the cell sites, again, consistent with his residence.
All right, so could it be that Magbanua, Garcia, and Rivera are all consistent with being at Rivera's residence at the same time that morning?
It could be, yes.
Okay. All right, when is Catherine Magbanua's next communication on her phone?
So the next communication that we have is 11:23 a.m.
So about 50 minutes later?
Yes.
All right, and where was her phone located 50 minutes later at 11:23?
So 1123, we see the cell site and sector that her handset is using. It will be consistent with having moved away from Mr. Rivera's. It's now south of Mr. Rivera's, and could be consistent with Ms. Mascaro's residence.
Okay. Could this be consistent with her leaving Adelson's house that morning, dropping the money off, and then going to pick up her kids from Mascaro's?
Yes.
All right. I want to move on to our next section, which is I wanted to ask you about some different messages that you found in the iCloud, and then we'll be done.
Okay.
So, the defense theory in this case is that Catherine O'Banois frantically showed up at the defendant's home the night of July 18th, informed him that some violent men killed his brother-in-law, and were now blackmailing him. Were there any text messages between McBanois and Adelson about blackmail or extortion in the days following the Dan Martel murder?
Certainly none that I found.
Can you show us the text between McBanois and the defendant in the week that followed the murder?
So these are some text from that week. This would be July 19th. This would be the day after the homicide. These texts start at 12:13, just after noon on the 19th, and we see them going back and forth about going to the pool or the beach, and kind of casual conversation.
Okay, so this is the same day of all the call activity we just saw.
Yes.
And locations we just saw. And so sometime after noon at 12:13, Charlie Adelson says he's headed to the gym. Are you going to the beach? It's so nice.
Yes.
Okay. Looking at also that week, looking at your next slide, July 22nd. They're talking a little bit about the weather, how late it is in the day. Catherine McBanois asked for Jerry to call in a prescription scalp medication.
Yes, a prescription for shampoo.
Okay, prescription shampoo. Okay. All right, and what's next?
So on July 23rd.
So on this one, Charlie Adelson says, don't forget to text Jerry your info. He'll call it in the morning, sweet dreams. And then later she says something that he says, laugh out loud.
I mean, if this doesn't scream her extorting him, I don't know what does.
Loud too.
Correct, yes.
All right. What's next?
So the July 25th.
On July 25th, she says, have a good day, smiley face. He says, you too.
Yes.
In all of the messages, in all of the messages from the records between this defendant and Catherine McBanois from 2014 to 2016, are there any messages where they discuss Charlie Adelson being blackmailed or extorted or violent people wanting to hurt his family, anything like that?
None that I found.
During those years, though, I mean, do the defendant and Catherine McBanois stay in regular contact with each other, even after they break up that fall in
Yes.
2014? Okay. From the messages, do they appear to have a close friendship?
They do, yes.
Okay. And when I say in regular contact, sometimes they talk multiple times a day, every day.
Correct.
All right. Can you show us just a couple of examples of their close friendship? Can you show us October 6th, 2014?
Yes, so this talks, and these be 2:18 in the morning, 2:18 in the afternoon of October 6th. It's communication about him being a good father, potential to be a good father.
Okay. And she's saying that you have to find the right girl that you can deal with and to see if she's worth it?
Yes.
Okay. And what's next? And if she gives you hell, Catherine McBanois will set her straight, winky face, and he says, I love you. It makes me feel good that you care about me. I'm very lucky to have you as part of my life. And he says, I'll always care about you.
That's correct.
Or she says that, rather.
That's correct.
All right. Next, she says, no, can we go back to the next one then after he says he's lucky to have her as part of his life?
Yes, I'm going to need to fix something on that slide.
Okay, no problem. I'm good with that. Okay. Can you go to the just a second. Okay. Here she says, I always know, this is in February of 2015, is that correct?
Correct, February 24th.
She says, see, I always know how to make you smile. He says, yes, you do. She says, good, I love you. He says, I love you too.
Correct.
All right, what's next? On October 27th of 2015, she says, hey, you're probably busy celebrating your birthday. I just want to thank you so much for helping me out. I love you. I love you. Have a great birthday. I hope I see you soon this week. And he says, can't
By the way,
get lunch with you.
as someone who, I'm sure other people who post content about Charlie get this, but like every other day I get a comment that he looks like Larry Fine from the Three Stooges or what. There's always someone who's like, this guy looks like Larry Fine this guy looks like the Three Stooges. I get one every other day. I'll get a comment about
You're the best, and I'm lucky to have you as a friend for life. Smiley face.
Yes.
Okay, what's next? All right, and then this one they kind of exchange, you don't miss me, I do miss you, with some, okay.
Yep.
Go to the next one. All right. This one, they're talking about something, and he ends it with, LOL, you're the best.
Correct.
And LOL, does that mean laugh out loud?
It does, yes.
All right. Were you involved in securing a wiretap of some of the suspects in this case in 2016?
Yes.
And what is a wiretap?
A wiretap is sort of a general term for our ability to intercept either wire communications, something said over a phone line, electronic communications, maybe a text, or oral communications, things that are spoken. But when law enforcement is able to lawfully intercept those to record them during the course of an investigation.
Does an order have to be signed by a judge and sent to the phone carrier in order to have authority to conduct a wiretap?
Yes.
And so because of that, I mean, are we able to go back and listen to the content of these phone calls that we've seen today from back in 2014?
No, we don't have the ability to go back and record phone calls in the past. The only way that we would know about communications would be if we were to extract a phone, like we see the Cellbrite extractions or forensic extractions of phones, we may be able to see some text messages, but we don't have the ability to capture things back in the past.
At that time, we didn't know that a crime was about to be committed.
That's correct.
Okay. But if for a wiretap investigation, police can get that order to listen to suspects' phones in real time.
That's correct.
All right. Can you explain to the jury what type of equipment is needed to conduct a wiretap?
Certainly, it's relatively complicated in today's world, but there is equipment on the carrier side where they're able to send us information about the activity, the text message content, and information about the calls, who's calling who, all of that information. And then they're also able to send us the actual content. So they're able to send us the audio when someone's on a phone call of what's being spoken. And then we have computer servers that receive that information and software that displays it for us, an intercept kind of interface where we're able to see the incoming calls. We have some controls where we can play calls back, and we can see calls for the day, write synopsis for them as they're coming in. So it's again, a lot of computer equipment necessary to conduct that.
Do the people who are listening or monitoring to these calls in real time have to go through certain types of training to do that?
They do. First, we do what we call minimization training. And we are not, law enforcement, we're not allowed to intercept calls that may be privileged or not relevant to the investigation. So we can't listen to everything that is said. So the first thing that a monitor or someone who's listening has to know is, one, about the investigation. So they have to read that affidavit, the application for the wiretap. They have to read that thoroughly and be briefed on the investigation so that they know the relevant persons, the relevant evidence that we're looking for, kind of the history of the investigation, so they have some context when they're listening to these calls going on. And then they have training on how to actually do that minimization, how to actually stop the recording, so that we can't hear that information, we can't record that information that we don't believe is relevant or authorized under the order. So they receive, again, training about the investigation and then how to actually operate the software.
And they're required to minimize it, right? If it's not relevant to the investigation. It's not
that is
choice.
Correct, yes.
Okay. And are you limited in time to decide whether the conversation is relevant or not?
We are. Again, everything is geared towards not intercepting communications that we shouldn't. So for parties that we know never talk about anything relevant, then that period of time that we listen may be less. And then we immediately minimize because we know historically they never talk about anything that's relevant to the investigation. For parties that do communicate about the investigation, then that period of time may be a little longer. The amount of time that we stay minimized, or the amount of time that we come off of that, before we come back and spot check, or we will come back and see if the topic of the conversation has changed. Are they now talking about something that's relevant? Again, that varies a little bit based on the monitor's knowledge of the case, history of communication between them. But yes, we do have some guidelines for the amount of time that we can listen and how long before we can go back.
Okay. How can we as listeners of the call tell if an officer is doing that?
You'll hear an audible tone during the call. It's an abrupt audible tone.
And is the portion of the call that is minimized recorded then?
It is not recorded.
All right. When listening, do you have to be on the lookout for suspects who may try to mask the meaning of what they're talking about just in case law enforcement is listening?
Yes.
Is that common for people to do?
It is, yes.
All right. And were Catherine McBanois and Charlie Adelson's phones tapped in this case?
They were, yes.
All right. Who supervises these wire calls?
I was the wire room supervisor, the person responsible for kind of the technical side of it. And then from the legal side, there is a state attorney assigned that is conducts the training, keeps up with the investigation, and ultimately a judge who authorized it.
And who keeps or maintains the recordings of the calls?
During the investigation or during the course of the wiretap, we have a partnership with the Florida Department of Law Enforcement. They're the first point that receives that and sends it on to us. They maintain those originally, and then at the completion of it, those tapes are transferred to us in our custody and maintained securely.
Okay. All right, so the bump in this case, was that at 1:47 p.m. on April 19th, 2016? When I say the bump, I mean when Donna Adelson was approached by the undercover officer and handed the article about Dan Markel's murder?
Yes.
All right, so looking at 1:47 p.m. on April 19th, 2016, who was Donna Adelson's first call after the bump? Can you tell us that from the call detail records?
I can, yes. So we see here her records from that date. The red line indicates the time of the bump or the time of the contact. And we see that her first call at 2:09 p.m. is outgoing to Charlie Adelson.
We have seen and heard about emails in the course of the trial which detail Donna Adelson's strong interest in the divorce of Wendy Adelson and Dan Markel. Is there phone communication in the iCloud between Charlie Adelson and Donna Adelson that shows Charlie Adelson's interest in the divorce?
Yes.
Okay. Can you show us that first message, looking at maybe October of 2013? Was there a message in mid-October about that? All right, what does this say?
So this is from Donna Adelson to Charlie Adelson. It says, a horrible evening for your sister and for us. Dad finally had to walk outside to lower his blood pressure. Just awful. I can't even explain.
She says she's on the way back to Wendy's house. Okay,
Yes.
can we go to the next slide? Now on the slide before, did it say, I bet let's talk this week by Charlie Adelson after he heard that?
Yes.
Okay. Looking at the next slide, what happened on October 30th of 2013?
There's, again, a message from Donna Adelson indicating she just got a text from Wendy mentioning that she's moving ahead.
Welcome, Carolina. Carolina? Thank you so much. Welcome to the Bows.
Because I'm going to bunk with you, buddy. We're going to be buddies. We're going to be pals. We're going to wrestle around.
With the purchase of a home.
Okay. And what does Charlie Adelson respond to that? Can you read those to us?
He indicates she never told me. Why is she doing this? She never mentions it to me on the phone. I guess it's because it's stupid. Did Danny give her permission to move? Schools.
Okay. And what does he say after that?
He says he will hold that over her and use it as leverage, especially after she puts money down. She is really stupid. Give them their asking price? Question marks.
And what about after that?
He says, I can try again, but I only talk to her about one time a week and leave about 7 messages. And then he indicates this would be October 31st, and the times here on these messages are still in coordinated universal time. So in October, we're 4 hours behind, but that should be about 1 a.m. But he says, spoke to Wendy. I think I made some headway. Hope you're having an awesome time in Israel. Have a good night.
Okay. Now, the times that we saw earlier in your presentation, those have all already been converted to the actual time that was sent, right?
That's correct. Everything up to this point has been converted to our local time. And I do point out that communications with Donna here that we've just been talking about, those, if you notice the time in the bottom of the messages still say UTC plus 0, which means there's been no offset or subtracting of time to get to our local time zone.
So in those messages, he seems to be thinking that her buying a house is not a good idea. Danny will hold it over her head, use it as leverage, and he's trying to talk her out of it.
Correct.
All right, and then what's the next message to his mom? Wait, I'm sorry. Did you read the last one?
I did. Spoke to Wendy. I think I made some headway. Hope you're having an awesome time in Israel. Have a good night.
Okay. And how does his mom respond? Okay. Let me go to...
Just indicates that the Adelsons appear to be in Israel at the time and look forward to speaking with him soon.
Okay. Danny sent them some pictures of the kids in Halloween costumes, it says?
Yes.
Okay. So let's go to the next one.
So Charlie states, spoke to Wendy for 20 minutes last night. She texted me today that she pulled the plug on the house.
Okay, with some smiley faces.
Yes.
And how does Donna Adelson respond?
Wow, Charlie, thank you again. How did you accomplish that? You're a miracle worker. Tell us.
Okay, lots of exclamation points used there.
Yes.
And this is on Halloween of 2013, on October 31st of 2013, and then the day after.
Yes.
Okay, and then the conversations about her buying the house and Charlie Adelson against it, that was all the day before Halloween of 2013?
Yes.
could buying a house in an area be unfavorable for like a motion for relocation?
I believe so, yes.
All right. What about in February of 2014?
I believe there's more here in this exchange from November 1st. This will be the continuation of the October 30th to the 31st to the 1st.
Okay.
But he indicates, in response to the question of how did you accomplish it, he responds with a series of text about how that went.
So Danny would have used it against Wendy as leverage. She needs to get permission from him. He has several other reasons why it would have been the dumbest mistake of her life, the second dumbest mistake of her life.
Yes.
Okay, and what's next?
It says it took about 15 minutes of talking to her. I basically told her owning a house is like getting married, renting is like dating. Why the F would you want to get married again?
Okay. And what's next in February of 2014? Was there some more messages from the mom?
Yes, so February 15th of 2014, so been in the evening hours or afternoon hours, Donna Adelson indicates that Wendy is stressed out.
Okay. Does she say that Wendy will have to go through another depo? Could that be short for deposition?
Yes,
Is that where the other side's attorney gets to ask you a bunch of questions?
it is, yes.
That's outrageous. They're talking about repetitive motions being filed, and the $500,000 account is the same $50,000 he tried to get his hands on last time, but it's in Wendy's name.
Correct.
Okay, and what does Charlie Adelson say to that?
Crazy.
And what does Donna Adelson say after that? Total waste of the court's time. Yesterday, he sent Wendy a text that said he saw her leaving the school at 2:07. He's stalking her.
Yes.
Okay, and what does Donna Adelson say after that? That Wendy wants to file a protective order, is that what that said?
Yes.
But that's very hard to do unless there's a previous history of threats or abuse. But she wants to let the judge know he's stalking her.
Yes.
Okay, what's next? And Charlie Adelson says, I agree.
Correct.
All right, what does Donna Adelson say after that?
Anyway, it looks like mid-March or mid-April before anything will be resolved regarding him paying her through the court system.
Okay, and then does Donna Adelson go on to complain about the judge on the case giving him too much time to pay?
Yes.
Okay, and what's next? Okay, is that more complaints about the judge in the divorce case?
Yes.
Okay, what's next? Charlie Adelson, does he say how much per hour the divorce attorney costs and that she needs to give a refund or complain to the bar?
Yes.
All right, and what's after that? Does he ask whether Wendy's
Here's just the enmeshment. Look at these two. About Wendy's divorce. These two are just...
mad at her attorney yet?
He does, yes.
Okay, what's next? What does Donna Adelson say here?
In response, she says yes, but don't get, I assume that to be her, worked up about it. She's too stressed about it. Let's just keep conversation with her light and not add to what she's dealing with. Let her just get through Monday with positive family support. Nothing stressful. Trust me on this.
Okay. So Wendy's so stressed out, she doesn't want Charlie Adelson adding any more stress to her.
Correct.
All right. What about after that on February 17th? So does Donna Adelson indicate there that she's just leaving the courthouse?
Yes.
Okay. And what does Charlie Adelson say?
Says at work and then ask, how did it go?
What does Donna Adelson say to that?
Okay, we'll talk later.
Okay. Charlie Adelson asks what happened?
Yes.
Does Donna Adelson then go into some detail about what happened in court, what Wendy wants the parenting coordinator to do, and that Wendy wants the parenting coordinator questioned because she hates Danny, and will ask the court to have...
Are you objecting?
Yes.
What is your objection?
Read the whole thing or not all of it.
Please read the whole thing, the rule of completeness.
The judge was really pissed at him for not paying Wendy, but she will allow them to depot her with very strict limitations on the questions. Then Wendy wants the parenting coordinator questioned because she hates Danny and will ask the court to have him court-appointed psychological testing! Exclamation points.
Okay. And what's next?
Charlie Adelson states, this is February 17th, her attorney is going to run up a very large bill for Danny.
All right, and Donna Adelson says, yep.
Yep.
All right, what about 2 days later on February 19th?
Another text from Donna Adelson. If you speak to Wendy today, tread lightly. Don't ask questions about the depot, her lawyer, etc. Tough day and she's really stressed out. The asshole showed up at soccer yesterday, and when she tried to leave with the boys, he said, no, stay here and play with Abba. She to the boys that Abba had to leave, and he said, "No, I don't." Of course, she woke up to another email from him telling her that she is lying to the boys about their father's whereabouts and that this will be brought before the court. Such a fucker. It was Wendy's day. He is allowed to attend the children's activities, but that's where it ends.
So Donna Adelson looks like she was mad that he didn't just attend the activities. Dan Markell engaged with the kids, gave him a hug, said he wanted to play with them.
Yes.
All right. Was there a text message exchange in March of 2014 where Donna Adelson asked Charlie Adelson to erase a text that she sent?
Yes.
Okay, can you show us that? Can you read it to us?
2 texts here. The first says 37 miles to Gainesville. And the next is, I can't talk now, but I'll text you before we stop in Gainesville where I can go to the bathroom and have a moment of privacy. Then I'll call. Please pick up because I will have very limited, quote, alone time today. Erase this text after you read it.
Okay, so she wants to go to a bathroom to talk to Charlie Adelson on the phone in private once she gets in Gainesville here,
Yes.
but wants him to erase that text on his phone.
It's what it indicates, yes.
Okay. Then a few minutes later, what does she say?
We'll stop in about 5 minutes and I can speak to you privately about Dad's birthday gift when I'm out of the car. I have some good ideas.
Okay. So in this text, she's saying that the text she sent 30 minutes before is about Dad's birthday gift?
It would seem so, yes.
Or that the call she wanted to make was about Dad's birthday gift, rather?
Yes.
Does she ask him to erase this text message, though?
No.
And that's the message where she's talking about what the secret call is supposed to be about, right?
Yes.
If the defendant's dad, Harvey Adelson's birthday, isn't until July, it would appear that they were planning a birthday present for him here on this phone call in a Gainesville bathroom about 4 months in advance, right?
Yes.
All right, what does Charlie Adelson say when his mom sends him that?
He replies, great.
Okay, and what's next?
Charlie responds, if you don't pick up, I'll call you back in 30 seconds.
Okay, and what's next?
Don't call yet. I need 5 minutes till we get to Panera Bread.
All right, was there a message in May of 2014 where Donna Adelson references having a tough conversation with Wendy?
Yes, and I'm sorry, there's an additional response here after these text messages where Charlie Adelson texts, you guys back yet?
Okay, and that's it. I'm sorry, can you go back?
I can try.
That would appear to be about...
Yes, does not like going backwards.
Okay. Does it appear that the you guys back yet message was about 6 hours after the I'll call you when I get to the bathroom?
I believe so, yes.
Okay. Could that be consistent with arriving back in Miami from stopping in the Gainesville area?
Could be, yes.
All right, so this message references a tough conversation with Wendy and a horrible morning with Danny?
Yes.
I mean, do we think Rob is going to testify in this trial? Because that's going to be another thing that's going to be super interesting to see.
In a tough conversation with her?
Yes.
All right, looking at June 7th of 2014, what does Donna Adelson say to Charlie Adelson that day?
Just waiting for Gary to come. Should be here any minute. Hope you have a good evening. Would you like the apartment? The weekend of June 19th to the 22nd. I think we're going to Tally. I miss the boys too much to wait till Dad's birthday week to see them. Besides, we want you to spend some time here. We love you. Heart, Mom and Dad.
Okay. Now, June 7th, this would be the day after, would this be the day after Garcia and Rivera arrived back in Miami with an unsuccessful trip for them to Tallahassee where they did not accomplish the murder of Dan Markell?
Yes.
So this would have been the day after they got back in Miami from Tallahassee?
Yes.
Okay. And what's next?
He responds, okay, have fun, still working on Dad's B-Day present, to which Donna Adelson says, I know it's a tough B-Day, being 70 and all, but I know you'll come through. And then there's a thumbs up, kissy face, Mom.
Okay. And those messages are on the following day on June 8th, 2014?
They're actually June 7th if you do the time correction.
I apologize. So still on June 7th, still the day after Garcia and Rivera arrived back in Miami.
That's correct.
After they were not able to kill Dan Markell.
That's correct.
Just a second.
All right, fam. That concludes the direct examination of Chris Corbett. I don't know if I'm going to watch the cross. I mean, it's really not. The man's unflappable. He does an awesome job. So what I will do is set up a poll for who we do next. And then whatever I'm going to do it for the members of YouTube and patrons, and whatever you guys pick, we'll do the next witness. But before that, I don't think I'll go live on Monday. Maybe I don't know. I'll set up the poll. But remember, this is going to, when I end this, it should take you to Tuesday, 2:30. Set up a live for 2:15. I am going to cover the next Donna Adelson pre-trial hearing. I think it's the last case status, whatever they call it, conference. This Tuesday, 2:15 Eastern. I will be live covering it. I took off from work, so thank you guys so much for being here. Thank you for all the support, the live chat, the chats and Venmos and PayPals. I appreciate you. I'll set up the poll for what we'll do next, what witness will do next, and I think that's it. So have a good weekend, everybody, and I'll catch you on Tuesday at 2:15. Thank you so much, everybody. Bye. Have a good weekend.